Hello, 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 hello. Andre Scambo here with another episode of the Ponytails podcast. Thank you for joining us. Man, this has been a breeze so far. The season 8, it's been a blast. I'm looking forward to recording with Dan Moore coming up, guys. So make sure you keep an eye on that. That will be the season 9 finale. We're starting to promote it now just because, of course, everybody knows Dan and we are excited to host him. I'll be in person with him. So look forward to that. If this is your first episode and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about and who Dan Moore is, well, let me tell you a little bit about what the Ponytails podcast is. We interview people who sold books door to door with a company called Southwestern Advantage. This company recruits college kids every summer since 1868, and including the summer, to go and sell books door to door for 80 hours a week on straight commission in a different part of the country, sometimes in a different country if because they come from Europe, on like no guarantees, and it's a crazy experience. Oftentimes, kids do really well, make a ton of money. Sometimes they don't do so well, and there's stories behind that as well. We talk to those people and ask them how that's the experience went for them. Some of them are doing all sorts of different things. We're talking about AI. People are into hot air balloon insurance. Southwestern Real Estate is one of our sponsors. They're often on the show because they have so many different agents. We got people doing insurance with like Cardinal Senior Benefits. It's a variety, man. So hopefully you guys enjoy the show and enjoy it so much that you come back and check out some other ones. We are well into the 200s of episodes now, so man, it's been a ride so far, and we'll continue to do this as long as we can. There's supposed to be about 100,000 living alumni, so hopefully we will not run out of guests anytime soon. Speaking of guests, my guest today, Jordan Owen, sold for 2 summers in 2006 and 2007. He was part of the Eagle Blitz organization, going to the University of Texas, originally from San Antonio, Texas. You can find him on Instagram, and we'll put the link to that on the description, and you can see it on the screen if you're watching along. If you're just listening, it's on the description below. So if you want to go get a hold of him or check out some of his stuff, make sure you go there. He currently lives in New York City, and his favorite scroll was number 5. I will live this day as if it is my last, a great one, of course. So when I come back, we'll be on with Jordan. Hey.
Hey.
Do you go by J.O.? Is that why you put J.O. on the...
A lot of my friends and most of my Southwestern buddies, book people, called me Jo.
Nice.
Some friends nowadays, but growing up it was more the nickname. But feel free, Jordan's fine, Jo, either or.
Okay. Nobody calls you Joe? Just because it's J.O.?
Only idiots when they're trying to make fun of the Jo thing, or they're trying to make it, a thing. But
That's not
you can't annoy me with a name thing.
Gotcha. The only thing I don't like is Andy, but everything else is fine.
Andy.
People always go, is it Andres, or how do your parents say it? And it's trying to teach someone to roll their R's. It's just, you can call me Andres. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I worked with a guy, and he was very particular, and he had your name as well, and I had to work on it. But I'll just call you Andy for short.
No, please don't. If you call me Andy, I get to take a Sharpie to your bottom of the left foot and just be like, and write Andy.
Oh
And
yeah, all right.
Oh man, hey, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I've heard great things in general. You were recommended, and I love when we get people who we've never met before, because it just really brings out what this podcast is about, which is the shared trauma that connects people. And so, and so let's dive in. 2007, you're leaving Southwestern. I usually like to just jump right on into kind of what brought you to what you're doing now and kind of the journey since Southwestern. Feel free to be as detailed on that or as not detailed on that as you wish. But what have you been up to since? And then what are you up to now?
Yeah, sure. And I do think it is kind of a fun lineage all the way from the book field. So I'm happy to share it. So when I was leaving the book field, I was broke because second summer was a little tougher than the first summer. And also extenuating circumstances. I had a changeover in rent and where I was living, and finishing college and paying for college, and needing to figure out my focus and going into classes and not skipping classes and that kind of thing. So for me, when I got back, I didn't have as much money as I thought I was going to have. And I decided with my my lack of zeal for academia itself to use this newfound sales knowledge that I thought I had from the book field. And my roommate at the time was working at a small advertising agency. So I was like, I need to change from this paradigm of hating school. I think I have to drop out because I can't afford it. So I dropped out and went to work as a free intern at this ad agency in Austin, Texas. And right before then, I think I had broken my thumb playing flag football, which is embarrassing. But I was the quarterback and someone tackled me, which you're not supposed to do anyway. So I don't blame my own athletic ability. Um, so I started this internship and I had no idea what online advertising was. It was basically an SEO, SEM um, business, helping small companies like local regional companies figure out how to get their name on Google and ads placed on Google and stuff like that. And I had taken one marketing class in college. I think I got a B. All I remember was there was a couple. Vince Young was supposed to be in that class, and he showed up like once or twice. But I had no like marketing acumen, right? So I started working there. I had a cast on my wrist. I couldn't type with this whole hand. And they're like, all right, you got to send a bunch of cold emails and just try to get meetings. That's your job. You're an inside sales rep.
Oof.
So I was like, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'll do it. And I was kind of good at it, and I was kind of tenacious and competitive. That was my nature. So I remember I got $50 to set up a meeting for the big sales reps, the big dogs. And all of them basically were really talented from what I got to witness on these calls. So immediately I wanted to be one of those people. I knew that they got paid commission on all their deals, like I was remembering from the book field, and I got $50 just for setting up meetings. So learned a lot, kind of like changed that role a little bit as because I was the only person doing it. And then um, and I said, hey, I need to be full time. You need to hire me. And they were like, okay, we'll see if we can make this position $27,000 a year. How does that sound? And I was like, yes, let's do it. So that was my first gig, 27K. And I worked there for a couple of months, and then I was recruited off LinkedIn for another startup that was kind of tangent in the online marketing space. And I remember my first call with a recruiter. They were like, "Well, I don't know what you're making currently, but would you be okay with 42K?" And I was like, "Yes." So on the phone, I was, I think that'll be fine. That'll be fine. So, my kind of initial that first family that I remember, still have friends that worked at that first agency. But then I went to the startup, and we were about 30 people, and I was one of two inside sales reps. So fast forward a couple of iterations and working at that spot. I was doing quite well. I changed the paradigm of the inside sales reps to get paid to do certain small deals to where I could get the commission. Also incorporating into a comp plan, getting percentages on deals that eventually closed. And so
Yeah.
changing the system so it fit me, obviously. And I remember I got multiple no's in a row, but I kept asking my VP to bump me up. Like I sit on all these calls with the AEs, the account executives, and the senior account executives, et cetera. And I'm like, I'm anticipating their answers. I know what they're going to say. I know the process. I'm setting up the meetings already. Like, come on. But that was a big jump. That was basically, at that point I had worked up and I was more in the like 60K range, but it's still very entry level, right? And that next position was definitely like a triple, or you could do quite well there.
Whoa.
And so I kept asking, but it was a while. And then I finally got that call up and like just really started killing it, not gonna lie, and was doing well. And the business kind of shifted here and there. It's a startup, we changed focuses in the industry. It was very esoteric a little bit what we were focused on, and specifically kind of my focus, my avenue was very esoteric in the kind of underbelly of the internet. kind of policing a lot of fraud and stuff that happens on online advertisements, and still goes on today, but in like way more complicated ways. So worked my way up, and got to be where the company bought a different company and took their name because it was a much more apt name and had kind of a more forward, future looking perspective. But they basically they wanted to continue to milk the revenue cow that was the old business model. And so I essentially started heading up that business model on the business side. And then we kind of had our own COO, CEO of that business unit. But he and I were just kind of two heads of the same horse, just running along that. And fast forward a little bit more, we're still doing well. The business is changing. Everyone's focus is on the new cool stuff. And I was well aware of it and in all the meetings, but I was like doing the other side of the business. And then there was kind of some grumbles, some rumors, some things. And turns out I was there for 6 years and 1 day, and Google acquired that company. So at that point, we were more about 150, maybe 200 people total. I can't quite remember. And that had ebbed and flowed over the years that I was there. But, starting out with 30-ish. And at the time of the acquisition, of all the employees at the company, I remember that only the CEO, who started 2 months before I did, the COO and the CTO, only 3 people had been there longer than I had. And I wasn't a C-level. I was just this like senior sales person running this part of the business. So it was definitely a coup. And I remember that, it was great for everybody. And I remember calling my mom and telling her, like, you won't believe it. And she told me this story that I didn't remember, but she said, she was questioning me because she was, as a mother, she's concerned, like, why are you going to this weird startup when I left the ad agency where one of my friends worked? Because she knew my friend and she kind of understood that business. And this one was a little more like analytics, and she, it's all weird internet stuff. And she asked me, why are you going to this startup? And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe one day Google will buy it. It's that kind of a plan. But I didn't remember that. And she's like, you called it. How did you call that? And I said, I was lucky. That was lucky. So yeah, that was that chapter. And then Google has offices in Austin, but they didn't have anybody in the entire company that did what we did, which is kind of this higher end software as a service, consulting, engagement, real customer service heavy, neutral. It's like, let the data speak for itself. It's not all about Google. So they didn't really know what to do with us at first. They knew that they had the plan somewhat. So they folded us into the offices in Austin, and they did fire some people. They did tell some people, for your role, you need to move to headquarters in the Bay. But it was going to be a relocation thing. And at this point, I'd been in Austin for, at that point, probably like 10 years. And they gave me the option to move to San Francisco, Chicago, or New York if I wanted to stay with Google. So I'd been to New York quite often for work at that point, and then it was my favorite of the 3. And so I didn't even think about it. I just said, like, let's send it. Let's go to New York. And it took about, I think the relo was like almost a year after that. So we were working in the offices in Austin, came to New York, knew everybody.
What year is it? Sorry to interrupt. Like about.
This is 2015.
Oh, yeah. So okay, got it.
Yeah, because at that startup was 6 years, so that was the large chunk of my time after book sales, for example, is pretty much the entirety. And then when I got up here, then now I've been in New York for 8 years almost. So I came to New York, stayed with Google for a while. They did a lot of figuring out what to do with that kind of a salesperson. So specifically to this podcast, there's lots of information that's interesting on the marketing side, but for this, as far as sales, they really didn't understand what to do with that level of a salesperson. software as a service. That's not really their MO. They have some products that are SaaS models, but they're usually free, or they're
Right.
usually in-house products. So the goals are different. Um, so they capped how much you would earn. And I had some amazing years before Google bought us. Um, and essentially, I, I I was making as much as you could make at Google without like managing 10 people or something. But that was still way less than I had made in my good years in the startup world and in the more like
Hmm.
knowledgeable comp plan structures on the
And
SaaS side.
you didn't own any of that company because you weren't in early enough, so you didn't get any sort of like compensation for the acquisition.
No, I did.
You
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
okay?
had because I got grants for, performance and overtime and signing when I signed on.
Oh, nice.
Like, so all those things were good. It wasn't like a see you guys later kind of a day, but it wasn't really that way for anyone. Even the CEO, it was probably like I know the numbers. Some of it is like, like we don't say
Sure.
numbers, but it was a large acquisition, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like I'm done forever. It was really just kind of helping me feel a little more secure because, like I said, I had started, dropping out of college broke, so all these things were just helping me like feel better about where I was going and saving up for retirement and all those kinds of things. And I did buy a house in Austin, so I was trying to see what that would look like, especially moving away. Uh, yeah.
That's sick.
So
I
then,
mean, crazy getting bought by Google. That's not many people can say, "Oh yeah, Google bought us because we were badass like that." Like
yeah,
that's
and
pretty sick.
the specific story for me, it was interesting because as a non-college graduate, I remember a few people at Google telling me, it'd be probably quite difficult for you to get where you are in this company in Google outside of this acquisition process. So it was for sure a kind of I mean, it was fortuitous for me, but it, I'm kind of now like a champion of people. You don't need a degree because I don't have one, so I need to, you
Same.
know, hold that
I mean,
torch, right?
I have a degree, but I'm a champion if you don't need one because
Yeah,
I'm mad about it for the. I mean, I'm in debt because I got a degree that now the economics isn't helping me do this. Talk
yeah,
about poop stories on the book field, but
yeah.
but I
But
owe
but
money
you
for
do
the
what you
book
love.
field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was kind of my experience at Google. It was obviously very interesting. Happy to answer any Google questions, but at
Sure.
the in the in the environment we were working in, it had a little bookiness to it in that you had to be quote unquote googly, right? So no matter what your performance is, if you weren't doing some of the googly stuff, you wouldn't be seen favorably in perf and performance reviews. So you kind of had to tick some boxes. Like you couldn't not do the cold showers. You couldn't not do the execs and then go hit PC and be number one in your org and yada yada. So you kind of had to do all those things and I did love all those experiences on the book field, but when I got into my actual professional life, I tried to play my own game, and I was never very good about playing the game. So, I wasn't doing the things that I was supposed to do,
Mm.
um, and so it kind of alienated me from certain managers and things like that, and um, yeah, it was just funny. It was just funny, and at the end of the day, in my opinion, I should have been making twice as much as I was making because I had done that in the past. I'm, pretty close. And if I bring in a $10 million deal, I should get a percentage of that. If I bring in a $500,000 deal, I should get a percentage of that. It's just
Absolutely.
the
It's
company
fair.
is exactly you're making the same percentage. It was a no-brainer to me, and that inherently that's the way software sales orgs operate because Google wasn't aware and didn't quite know how to play that out across the the people who worked there. So I had people that chose not to go to Google that I worked with in the previous company who kept calling me for like a year saying, you got to come to this company. They're doing the same thing that we got acquired for, but they're better, they're smarter, they got more PhDs doing all the data science, they do this, they have this data set, and the vision was way more intelligent and targeted to where, like, to my actual role. Like, I could care less if what we were doing would help Google's stock raise, by $2 in the next 5 years or something. Really, I had some Google stock, but that didn't matter to me as much as like,
Right.
how do I go double my quota and like hit accelerators and make big dollars? And that was what these guys were telling me. These specific guys that I knew that had gone to the same company, and so I was just kind of like feeling it out, and they had a recruiter call me. I said I'll go have lunch, or I forget, coffee or breakfast with the VP, and he was keen because he knew that we knew what we were doing from our previous life before Google acquired us. So it was kind of pretty simple. And this is another little funny story potentially related to books. So I had a resume that I printed out for my first interview in 2007 or 8, when I changed from the agency to the startup. And then I was there for 6 years. And then I was at Google for 3+ years. And I didn't have to have a resume like for that changeover. So then you're talking about like 10, 11 years. And I had updated my LinkedIn, for clients and things so that they could see. And, I had all my #1 sales and President's Club and this and blah, blah, blah. But then this new company has this interview set up for me. And I'm like, I'm not making a new resume. Like, they know who I am. They know what like I did previously, because I was number
Yeah.
one compared to the guys that they've already hired, right? So I'm like, I'm not making a resume for this. And I'm just gonna like go in like a book sales guy and just close. And I'm thinking, this is the level I'm at, right? I'm supposed to be able to be a closer, and if I can't close without a resume in hand, like I should even consider something else in my career. So it was so funny because the VP, who then I was friends with him after that, but he said in the moment, he was like, so you didn't bring a resume? And he just kept looking at the desk like he was off put enough to where it threw him off his game. And I don't know, it was hilarious. But the second person who interviewed me that morning said, they told me we're gonna hire you. I'm just supposed to answer any questions you want. So like at 8 a.m., I have 6 hours of interviews scheduled for that day, and I'm just sitting back. I'm like, okay, great. This is good. So that's the story of how I got to that company, and I really
And
squeezed them on signing bonus. You got to match my Google stock that I'm leaving. All these things that was fun, because those are the same wins that we get when we get a signature, on the order pad, or we get a big contract signed. So
yeah.
all those things, I think, were all lineage from the book days. And and during those chapters, there was plenty of times where people would ask me about, my old job. And I heard you did this book sales thing or door to door, and it always was, I will say, it was always a feather in my cap, because obviously I was a salesperson, right? Direct sales. And so everyone that I worked with knew that that was part of my origin story, I guess. So I never frowned upon it. I never didn't talk about it. I always would tell people stories. And some of those colleague circles were definitely boys clubs at that time. Still, there was, but I'll say arguably some of the best salespeople we had, who ended up at my last role, the best several were all women that, you would think that they weren't in the cool club because of the way that company was structured, and there were still ways it was changing. But some of those old guard sales guys, specifically guys, loved all these weird stories. Obviously, you're out and you're tossing cats on trampolines and you're saying weird things at the door. So it's definitely, for all the people I worked with, men and women, that found it very intriguing, and they oftentimes would want little story times.
They're the best. I find
Yeah,
telling book stories to people who didn't sell books is almost better
for
than
sure.
to, to like you have to explain like HQ or
True.
whatever,
Yeah, how you
the
get to
contract
live
or
there. Yeah.
why the cold showers or whatever.
Hmm.
But but they're incredulous. Like the look on their face is just like, what? It's really interesting because to you it's like not a big deal now after
Now.
going through that experience, after living that. I always tell this story. I have a buddy, one of my best friends, Jesus Santos. Love you, buddy, if you're listening. But one time we were sitting in a hotel and we were supposed to be there for like a work conference. This was after I sold books. And we're sitting there and he shows up late. And I go, where the hell have you been? He goes, dude, you wouldn't believe it. The craziest thing I think that's ever happened in my life happened to me. So I'm like, dude, what happened? He goes, okay. So I'm driving through Kansas. I get a flat tire. I'm like, okay. He goes, and I don't have a spare. But I walk down the road and there's a guy, it's just a house, and it turns out that this guy happens to have a tire shop out of his house. And so he changed my tire, and then I came here. And I'm sitting there like, and then what
And
happened?
then what happened?
Like, he goes, no, that's it. Isn't that crazy? I go, oh, come on, man. That's like a Tuesday in the book field. Let's talk about
Yeah,
craziest
exactly.
thing in your life. Like, but it's funny because that's it, and it's shitty in a way because it makes us sound like really superior, and I don't mean to sound that way. It's just you just see so much crap that you probably can't even remember now, but you just know that this isn't that big of a deal versus this is a big of a deal. So I think it just helps you understand what big deal actually is, and it sounds like is kind of what these guys at work were, wanting the stories for, because to them it was just this mind-blowing experience, but to you it's just like, well, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
one time, yeah, I threw a cat on the roof or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's not that big. so
And
you so
they're
you so you switched to this company, and I had a question about your resume. Sorry to interrupt, but did the guy, what did the guy say? Like, you closed him obviously, but how did you like comment on that? Like, what did you say do you remember what you said to him to be like, yeah, this is why I don't have a resume, bro, or whatever? Like,
Well, I said, obviously my LinkedIn is up to date because clients are sometimes looking at it so they understand who they're about to meet with. That has everything in there, right? If you want, just print that out. But at the end of the day, what do you want to know? And there was
oof,
the power of silence, right? And he was like, I think I know everything. I think you know what we're doing, or you know what we're selling. You know what the quota is. You feel confident that you could hit that or whatever. You need to see your path to being successful. And it turned into him making me ask him questions to make sure I was going to be happy there. Because in essence, like, and even then I wasn't leaning as much on this, but he probably should have been saying that, because to a lot of people, I was at Google, and that sounds like it's the epic thing and
right.
the apex that you would reach for. But I knew on the back end what it was like, right? And I know I didn't want to be that playing that googly game. I wanted to make more money just based on performance, as I had been for many years. So I knew that I wanted to go there, but maybe he was kind of trying to make me feel safe in changing and leaving. So it worked out,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot in each one of those steps, from the first cold email I ever wrote to selling these big global deals with big brands, big contracts, a lot of negotiation, all that kind of stuff, and all of those things. I do believe, and I'm not just blowing smoke because it's this podcast. I do believe all of those things were built on some of the basic building blocks in the book field. And obviously there's a lot of differences, but pre-approach, answering objections, all those same principles are the same, right? And and a lot of times I would stress some of the things with colleagues because I wasn't just a one man show, right? It was a big effort. I was the one closing the deals, getting the thing signed. But I had sales engineers. I had to bring PhD data science people into these meetings that aren't necessarily great in meetings. So I'd have to basically set the scene for them, and I would talk in terms of closes and like, this guy is who you're here to talk to. He's the CTO. He wants to hear the numbers. So he's the logical close. And then this person, they want to be CMO. They're the emotional close. Like, we have to
Yeah.
make them feel that they're going to be promoted and they're going to be on the next cover of Ad Age and yada yada. So like all those tenets of leading the meeting, in the book field, it's just your meeting. You're there. But sometimes, the father walks in the door, gets home, and you're on the floor in the dining room that no one ever sits in.
Yeah.
You have to run that part of the meeting, quote unquote, meeting as well. So to me, it was all built on some of those things. And obviously some things maybe came more naturally to me. Some things didn't come naturally to me. And and I think I learned those things in the book field too, where like I wasn't as gregarious and like in your face and positive and like loud and
Sure.
amazing as like the guy who recruited me, Jack Clark III. Uh,
Oh, we love Jack Clark.
so
We've
I
had him on
knew. Oh yeah, I figured I wouldn't come on here if he hadn't been on here. No, uh,
here.
but I had to learn when selling books, because I did have to follow Jack Clark once, which is a great story. Um, and I immediately forced to confront the fact that I'm not like that. And how do I tailor my approach and the way that I do this thing to where it feels natural and I feel convicted, um, and to for my own way of selling. And that was the same from day one on the book field to day, you know, last day ever selling something.
Yeah.
And it's actually, to be honest, it's still in the world that I have to live in, but a little differently now.
So I get that. But were you when you think back on these memories, and I don't know if you remember this or recall, but when you were applying these principles that you had learned in Southwestern, were you actively thinking that? Or like, was there a moment where you're like, I'm gonna, like, for example, you just gave the example of the dad comes home, and that's how you're gonna use that experience to coach this, like, tech guy who's not, the most flavorful person to be showing in a sales presentation. Like, did you have that active thought and put yourself in that mindset, or was it more natural, where it was subconscious, you didn't really think about it until later, you're like, oh yeah, that was the Southwestern thing I did there?
It was both, I would say, because it was subconscious because it was a learned skill at that point, right? It was a
Right.
practiced behavior that I found to help me become more successful. And so when a meeting ran smoothly, because I think at the end of the day, that's what my best skill was at that time, was being honest with clients, and many clients told me that because it was a very competitive space. So sometimes we would have people like outside consultants ask clients, why did you buy this product from this person? And honesty was usually at the top of the list. Um, so I was trying to do that. And then I was just trying to make sure that every second of the meeting was how I wanted it to go. Because it can go off the rails at any moment, right?
Sure. Yeah. Especially when
So
multiple people are involved, multiple decision makers. I mean, who
exactly.
knows? Yeah.
And to me, it was a lot of subconscious things happening, because it's the same thing in selling books where, like, I know that if I'm like flashbacks are heavy happening, but like if I'm looking at the book upside down and I'm like flashing to the fractions page or whatever, and then I need to make sure, because the dad said he was like a chemist or something, so I'm gonna like go slowly over the periodic table of elements or something and be like, oh, this page, right? So it's like having those things just swirling around, because that's how I optimize every single second of a sales call in someone's house selling books, or in a big, SaaS meeting describing a big consulting project.
Oof. Now you said something really cool right there. Um, and I think people often overlook this is, well, there's a period where you learn the basics, right? When you're into selling books, you got to learn your approach, your intro, your demo, your close, cash collection, and then you're, wrapping up. And you got to get those basics all mastered and down. You can't really start doing anything advanced until, like, if you're great at the intro, that's phenomenal. Don't tweak it until you got the close down, because you got to get this baseline. But then once you kind of get that, from the number of reps that it takes to get that baseline down, you start picking up on what you're talking about, which is really the key to blowing up. People look for the secret sauce, like there's this magical extra word that you throw in there, or like I don't know, like okay, I got the basics down. Now tell me the real stuff. There is no real stuff. It's you, through the process of learning those basics, you start catching when the dad says he's a chemist, or when the mom says that, the kid plays soccer. And then that is important later on, because instead of saying, "Oh, you're busy with sports, Billy," you say, "Hey, soccer practice in the spring, I know it's around here in the spring, and that's when finals are coming up." Like, you start really painting a three-dimensional picture in the sale when trying to help the family, or in your case, sell the product, or whatever, the house, whatever industry people are in. That that's how you become a pro at it, is people that have done it so many times, who've mastered the basics so well, that from that they know, this is how I fit into this, and this is my personality, and this is what I can throw in. So that's really interesting that you throw that. We haven't had someone really mention that yet, although I think most people know that, but pointing that out and highlighting that, I think, is a huge factor.
Yeah.
Good call on that.
I will say that I also took my bad habits from the book fields, in my later years as well. Specifically in the sales space, right? Where, if I'm thinking, I wasn't the best at being on schedule, quote unquote, on schedule, in that I was definitely, I forget the wording now, prospect focused versus time focused, I think. Maybe that
Right.
was
Yeah.
the nomenclature. So in essence, I think we were taught to be time focused, just go out and work, just knock and knock and it'll happen, right? I didn't want to knock on doors that weren't buyers, right?
Yeah.
So I worked hard on only knocking on buyers' doors. So I won't talk to my nightly updates and the numbers that I gave sometimes. But I worked on figuring out how to make my close rate high. And then I carried that on into my professional life as well, where I probably should have done certain things, and it would have made, certain bosses over the years more happy with me, or they would have thought that I was doing what I should be doing. But I was just doing the approach that I felt best served me, and that actually kind of ties into why I ended up getting to the point where I decided to quit that life, um, which is, maybe the final cap on some of this update stuff. So I had left Google, went to this new company, was there for a few years, hit President's Club, did well. We got a new CEO who I thought was the dumbest person I've ever met, probably. And he wanted people to work in the office. At this point, like, I had made my name, I had hit my numbers, I did what I wanted to do. I took long vacations when I wanted. Like, I basically just, I rode around with that energy, if you will.
But if you were getting the job done, they didn't care, which you sounds like you were more than
Yeah.
that, getting the
Yeah.
job
So
done.
when you hit
So,
numbers, you should be able to kind of, write your own destiny. So they raised quotas, and so basically raised quota, which is fine. But then he changed how he wanted people to work. And so I said, okay, let me get this straight. You're changing my quota, but you're wanting me to achieve better results by not letting me work the way that I have proven to be successful, which was working from home, having my time, just focusing on the whales, essentially, that I was like targeting in my territory, because my territory was like 36 companies possible at that point, maybe a little more. And if I had one or two big deals, I could hit my number for the year, right? So I understood what that meant, because I had done it at that point for 10 plus years. And so he's, wanting me to come to the office, and I was just like slow playing it for many months. And at the time, I had used that flexible ability in that job to find some passion in this other hobbies that I had found once moving to New York. So I had started collecting watches with like some weird, cool people in Manhattan, learning about that stuff in general. I thought was interesting. I went to Switzerland with a buddy to look at watch factories and learn more about the like nitty gritty of it. And then that guy ended up making his own watches, which is the watch that I wear every day because he's my homie. And then I bought a camera because I wanted to take pictures of the streets in New York City. I'm new to New York City. And then several things started happening, and it changed my focus and mentality around what made life joyful. And that was being creative. And there was lots of creativity in the job and closing deals and figuring out the system, seeing how much I can make on this commission check if I structure the deal this way. There was creativity, and I got to work with amazing clients. There's the biggest retailers you can think of. There's the biggest nonprofits you can think of. So there's a lot of intrigue in the day-to-day at work as well, but not when I had to deal with I used to have this metric that I told people: I just want profit to overweigh grief. Profit can be dollars. It could be flexibility, cachet in the workplace, whatever. It could be a lot of things. Profit needs to be more than the grief. And the grief just started outweighing. I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. This isn't what I want to do. And so the calculations started happening to see how long could I survive if I quit this, to see if I could make something as a photographer. And so I quit in in January 2020, right before COVID.
Oh man, I was gonna say you tend to make interesting career choices before severe economic downturns.
Yeah.
07, you quit books to go to a startup right before 08.
Yeah.
You quit your cush job to go right before as a pandemic's spreading through China and
exactly. Yeah. Nice. So didn't know what the timing was going to be, but after the fact, I don't know if I would have done anything differently, because I don't think the dynamic at work, well, it would have been different because I wouldn't have had to go to the office, but it was more the internal struggle at that point, where I was just mentally wanting to it was the house divided. I wanted to give more energy towards this passion, that I could see maybe some light at the end of the tunnel, like to be successful and survive and make money, versus this long-term career thing I've been doing that, in all honesty, I was kind of phoning in a lot at the end there, because I knew what I needed to do to hit some big numbers, but I wasn't striving. I wasn't, I want to be number one. Like that wasn't my goal.
That wasn't driving you.
Yeah.
Damn. Dude, this is cool. This is great. Thanks for sharing all. This is really
Sure.
fun stuff. I have so many questions.
Go for it.
Both about marketing stuff, so we can get into that in just a second. I also want to ask you about photography, because I know we've kind of right to what you're up to now. And I pulled up your Instagram to share. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to some of our sponsors really quick to just kind of help them out. And then we'll jump into that. Guys, if you're listening, please, if you want to support us and you're not supporting us financially through Patreon, totally cool. I don't care. But support us by listening to these, because there's you never know who might want these opportunities, and they're really good opportunities. So check out a word from some of our friends. We're going to hear from Cardinal Senior Benefits and from Pat Rhodes. So stick around for just a second. It's literally only going to be about 60 seconds.
Hey guys, this is Pedro Vega with Cardinal Senior Benefits. I'm talking today about the one call close. Our business is based off of a very simple, short sales cycle. That means you walk in, they've never met you before, but by the time they leave, they're going to give you a routing number, account number, and social. The only reason they're going to do that is because the value is clear and the process is simple. So I love being a broker. It allows us to help people in a great way, and you get rewarded for it very quickly. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, Andres. You guys, part of the reason why I wanted to promote Southwestern Real Estate as a part of this podcast is because this podcast is really honest about the book experience. It has a variety of people who are on here who are talking about what really happened with them. And the truth of the matter is, we all know there's some goofy stuff that happens when you're selling books. Some of it's not so great. Some of it's just absolutely life-changing. What we wanted to do is take those fundamental building blocks and grow that up into an adult version that people can really take to the next level of their maturity and their mental health. And that's how we have built Southwestern Real Estate, is taking the best of the book field and growing it up to fit adults.
Boom. If you guys want more information on those opportunities, check out the links below or just message us on Instagram and we can get you in touch with both Pedro and or Pat to get you more info on those opportunities for work. Let's get back into this, Jo. So, okay. So many questions. I have your Instagram pulled up here, man. I'm going to share this screen here in a second. So I'm going to get it prepped for sharing. But as I'm doing this, I just wanted to ask you, so you get into photography January of 2020. When you say things started happening to make you see that this was something that you could have a career move, maybe there's someone out there wanting to maybe monetize. Maybe it's a hobby for them. Maybe they're a current photographer. I mean, Jacob Levine listens to every one of these episodes. Shout out Jacob. He's a photographer / videographer. Can you give us some idea to what started happening for you to say, hey, I can actually make money doing this? I mean, obviously, no, you have a talent for this, right? You have, because otherwise, if you didn't think you were good at it, you wouldn't quit your job to do this. But what started happening when you say things started going the right direction that made you go, hey, this is a sign. I should start maybe looking into this more.
Great question. So I'll take a step back. Things were happening mentally with my approach to living and what I valued, right? So I mentioned that I was enjoying collecting watches, and so in that time of my life, I was making really, really good money, and I got to that moment where I was kind of thinking, what am I prioritizing a little? I was kind of trying to keep up with the Joneses and do certain things where it's like, oh yeah, I have this, and I'm successful in this and that. But I didn't feel like as passionate and fulfilled on my own. Sometimes I felt like maybe I was only cool because I was successful, or I could only take people on dates to nice places because I was making money. And so I wanted to be more just to be more substantial in my own self with the things that I was interested in, passionate about, outside of the work that I did and the success that I did in the work that I did. So the love that I have found, and I'd always loved art, and I even a tiny quick story about a tattoo that I got when I decided to quit my job was in kindergarten. Our teacher made us write down on a piece of paper what we wanted to be when we grew up, put it in an envelope and gave it to your parents and said, don't open it till they graduate high school, right? And my older sister had the same teacher. My older sister wrote bus driver, but I wrote artiste. And I don't know if we can see it on screen, but I even wrote it the spelling that I misspelled it. So at my heart, I always did feel that I wanted to do art and be creative, and some of that was I liked seeing when my parents were creative. My mom does quilting, my dad was a teacher, but he was a very creative guy, and I always loved art, and I had been collecting art. I had all these photo books, and so I'd always been consuming all this stuff. So I was just leaning into that joy that I had for that. So those were the things that were more occurring internally. And externally, I was seeing the nest egg that I felt, okay, maybe I can survive a while without making money. Because I didn't see a path. I don't see a path today to make the money I was making back in my old life. I'd have to be one of the top 20 photographers in America, probably, which is there's a lot to make that money. So it's hard nowadays It's not the golden ages of like Valentino campaigns with Steven Meisel, right? It's like it's totally a different ball game now to make money. So it was more just a total like mental shift on where to focus my life. So that was what was occurring. And
Nice.
I think mainly I just wanted to see what I would do if I was thrust into that way of living. And it's still happening. Every day is like, well, okay, what am I going to do today? And so yeah, that was a little bit on that.
That's pretty badass, man. Like that's a cool, like just from your heart of hearts down as a kindergartner, you knew, and now you're like doing what you love, which is incredible. Let me share this on. I got more questions, by the way. There's still more like Google questions and stuff. We'll get to
Sure.
that, but we're here now, and I wanted to share a little bit. So on the screen, let me make this a little bit bigger so that we can. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Make it so it's a full screen here, and so this is your Instagram, guys. Check it out. JordanOwen.nyc is where you can go check it out. It's down below in the description notes. And so this is so. Walk me through some of these and maybe give me a little bit of like thought on like how'd you arrive here. So we're looking at this now 3 years later. This is the
Yeah.
art you've become. And how did you choose your subjects? How did you choose the style? How did you end up here?
So let's see how to answer that. That's a tough question. I can answer book questions all day.
Well, do you want me to go back to the older posts so we can kind of see the
No,
development?
yeah. Let's start here. Let's stay on the recent stuff.
Okay.
Uh,
By the way, hang on. Let me give you a follow right now. I don't know
all
where I
right.
follow you before. There it is. Boom.
Yeah. So
Oh,
this Instagram, like it's all photos. Obviously, I have done some video work with friends, but I'm primarily taking photos. So in essence, these are all models that agencies will send to get new photos. So these models need to show what they look like today versus 2 years ago or whatever.
sure.
So that when they go to castings, then the people are saying, "Oh, she's really cool. She has this classic look. Let's put her in this campaign or whatever." So these are this is like my bread and butter. Just like I do this quite often. Sometimes they are friends that I've shot before or whatever, and we shoot multiple times. But these are all just kind of like, it's almost the doodle pad, the sketch pad, if you will. And there's not a lot of like, it's very free flowing. And the things that I want to create and want to do are much more grandiose scale, larger, longer time frames. Like it might take me a year to do this project that I want to do. So a lot of this is, I consider this part of my visual alphabet, and then eventually I'll make sentences with this alphabet. That's like sort of the metaphor that I think about.
Right. That makes sense. And so as you're approaching this, like these are beautiful shots, by the way. Like this is really, really sweet. Yeah, it's really cool. Like this on the fire escape. This is so cool.
And mostly, so this is my new studio. It's on the roof of my new studio. A lot of the Instagram was actually taken right behind me in this apartment that I live in. So when I moved into this building, that changed a lot of how I approached things, because I got this apartment specifically because I could probably shoot in it. And I'd never shot, quote, studio photos before. And then I just tried and shot and did as many as I possibly could.
Look at all this variety. This is so cool. So you got like some of them are color, beautiful blend of color here, and like the inspiration. So do you come up with the poses? Do you ask the model, hey, do this, try that, or is this more something that they're bringing to the table to you, or how much of it is up to you and versus them?
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort. A lot of it is like directing is a huge element. So me directing the models, and it might be specific pose prompts. There's me and my mom. There might be specific prompts. It might be like, ooh, drop the shoulder or give some gravity, change that foot, point it there a little bit. Or a lot of times it's more thought provoking. It's, you know, like this is a good example. It's like, give me
This
the
is
look
great.
like, hey, don't come sit next to me on the bus. And so it changes the expression because models, especially nowadays, models are so used to like trying to look pretty or look cool. So I'm always concerned with making them look interesting beyond being, they're all models. So they're all already like, you know, they're all doing modeling jobs. People think they look good for one reason or another. So I'm always
Right.
trying to make it look just slightly interesting. And I'm usually concerned with the light first, sometimes to a detriment where I don't think as much about the character as I could, but I want the light to, I want to control every aspect of the light, you know, shadows and everything occurring in the square or this rectangle.
Yeah, this is incredible.
And
This is a beautiful picture.
and that's on some super old Polaroid, that one you just pulled up that they don't make anymore. It's like everyone loves it. It's so cool, colors. Like that's just what it looks like. There's not really any editing happening on that.
Wow. Now, okay, so of this stuff, oh man, this is I think photography is so interesting. Now, of all this stuff, you're saying this is kind of like the alphabet. So what is beyond the sentence? What's the paragraph? What's the
So click
you
on
know,
that one with that guy that you were right
this one?
there. That one, yeah. So this is closer to what I want to do, you know, today. So this is an editorial. So it's a specific kind of shoot, right? So if you're, I mean, who knows what the listeners know. So this is for this magazine. We had like 8 different outfits. There's this hair and makeup, a stylist. I had 2 assistants. This was at my studio building. We used a couple different places inside the studio. What else? There was a stylist assistant, the casting director at the
Oh,
magazine in Amsterdam. So it's kind of, this is where the team element comes more in. Like we have visions. This is a crazy process that I'd never done before. It's like probably way too in the weeds to describe on this, but the one right before this one, the black and white one, if you go back one, it's actually printed on metal, but it was a film photo. So it was a film camera. I printed it. Then I took a photo of it with a huge antique camera. And then that camera prints the photos onto metal. And then I scanned that piece of metal. And that's what we're looking at here, this digitized version of this piece of metal.
that's
So
wild.
I like some of that like multimedia aspects, some of the analog things I for sure like when, you know, it takes us a process. And I want to do more of that. So this project led, you know, gave the opportunity for that and led me to try this thing that I'd never done before.
This is so wild, man.
And all these
So cool.
clothes are like, you know, these earrings he's wearing in this image are like $80,000 earrings. So like the stylist gets these things on loan from, I think they're Balenciaga. So they just send him these things for these photo shoots, and we shoot them and then he sends them back. So it's like this odd like universe that exists for these kinds of photo shoots.
That is bananas. Now, okay, so what's the biggest challenge that you're facing here for like that's keeping you from your paragraph or sentences, right? What's like keeping you from your North Star here?
Um, the biggest challenge is you have to invent everything, right? As essentially an entrepreneur, as your own producer. I mean, you probably are very similar, right? Where if you want something to happen, you got to make it happen, right? No one's out there saying like, "Hey, we're gonna set you up with this," unless your, you know, your significant other has a connect at Tom Ford and they just get you to do this job for like that. I don't have any of that, right? I don't have any connects. I'm the opposite of a Nepo baby in that regard. So my biggest hurdle, I guess I would say, is I just have to devote energy the right way. And it's difficult when you need to make money. So that's why the Instagram is a lot of those shoots where I just get paid to shoot these model tests for the modeling agencies. And it's, I can easily do it. And so now I'm at that point, to your point earlier when you say you get enough reps. So I've gotten enough reps. And now I want to, I need to big time like double down on focusing on what I want to focus on. So conversations like this, conversations with other photographers and friends that I've made, now being in the industry, if you will, all of those conversations are always kind of geared towards improving the craft, which at this point is less about the clicking of the button in photos and more about the approach and the planning and the focus, the aesthetic, all the things that make you specifically stand out compared to the millions of other people.
Incredible. Now, from the book field, what stuff are you applying to your photography? Because that's not as direct, or is it? I guess I don't know.
I think it's all relevant, right? It's the conviction, because I won't lie, I was convicted in the books. I thought they were great. I thought everybody should buy them. Everybody's getting something. It's either words with friends or or whatever they're called, to the big bucks. Or
My friends
CDs.
with words, yeah, the Mufus.
My friends with words, yes. Mufus, yes. Okay.
My fun with words. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Something.
I didn't remember Mufu until we typed it in here. Yeah, so I think it's the idea that once I build that repertoire, that's kind of, it is me. Like, I'm not going to be the guy who takes the up close picture of makeup that's like perfect, because I don't care about that. I don't want to do that. I should do that because those are big jobs. Those are big campaigns for Maybelline or whatever, but I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to try to go get that job, right? So I need to figure out the avenues that lead me towards my buyers now, which is magazine editors. It's brands that have the appetite for images that don't look like the super clean, perfect, beautiful shots. They have a little more intrigue, or that is kind of built in my aesthetic that's in the Instagram or another work. So it's just focusing efforts, but then using some of those skills to, I mean, it comes into the way that I talk to people. If they're asking me, hey, will you do this job? And I'm using the same negotiation tactics, like, what is your budget? And, well, if you want that, we can't do that. Like, there's still aspects that occur in getting the jobs and, like, getting them to sign a bid. It's small, like, it's so paltry compared to what I was dealing with and the contracts and the big deals I was working on. So that, it's actually more similar to books in the sense that, I won't die if I don't get this job. Like, whereas in my corporate life, I really needed to close certain deals or else I would have a pretty bad year.
Can't feed yourself. Yeah.
That's
wild. And I imagine also too, I don't know how much of a factor this is, but from an outsider looking in, like, even just like, I always find it awkward posing for pictures. Granted, I'm not a model and I clearly don't look like one, but it can't be easy, no matter how much you've done it, to meet a new person and be like, all right, I'm going to wear this outfit or these $80,000 earrings, or, be in this specific pose with this man, right? But your ability to then go, hey, this is totally normal, and just be just that emotional connection that you can drive. I imagine that's also huge, right? In your line of work, where it's like, and kind of similar to mine too. Oftentimes you get people on here who are like super nervous before they go on. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm like, it's okay, it's gonna be fine. Just let me help you. And you're kind of guiding them through this emotional process, or this maybe potentially awkward situation. But because you're a pro, it just kind of like lightens the mood. I mean, do you ever get or experience anything like that with the models that you work with?
Totally agree. And I will say that when I shoot people who are not professional models, it's way more on that side, right? It's similar to you helping me understand how a podcast works, right? So you're the expert and I'm the novice, the layman. And so, I've done some things where it isn't models, or not a lot, because I'm focusing on that lane.
Sure.
But when I've done it, actually one time is right when COVID was kind of ceasing a little bit in New York, and we did this project trying to get people to come. My friend owns a camera store, film store. It's like the most popular one. It's called Brooklyn Film Camera. And they have this 8x10 Polaroid, or they have an 8x10 camera and an 8x10 Polaroid. So 8x10 is a piece of paper size. So the camera itself, the eyeball, lets you take a 8x10 photo. It's crazy. So you're up under the hood. It's like you're changing all the little things, it's very crazy and precise. And it prints on a piece of Polaroid film. So you get to see it within like 15 minutes. And so they asked me to be one of the people to do one of these portrait days where people book sessions, because it's a very rare thing. Not that many of these exist really that people are shooting, and the film is way expensive. So people book these sessions, and it was like couples, and it was their anniversary, or as a family that was just visiting New York, and they saw this as a thing to go do as a tourist somehow. And so it was essentially no people who are used to having their photo taken more than you or I are. And so and you only get one shot. It's not like, oh, that one was good, but change it like
again.
this.
You're blinking.
Yeah, your little chin down. No. So getting them into that moment to make one good image is actually, I would say, like the hardest one to do. But the people that were there, some of those people knew me and knew my work and had seen me at parties or whatever, but they never seen me shooting. And one of the main people were like, man, you're really good at directing people and telling them like how to feel and where to look and what to do with this shoulder and whatever. And so they just felt, like it was easier for them to have a photo taken, especially when it's like kind of this rigid robot statue thing that you have to do for this big camera. And I think that's, now I don't have, like, I just do it, right? But it is a learned skill, just like the reps in selling books, where I know that I can flip to this page upside down, or I can tell this quick little anecdote, or I know Johnny and Susie play soccer next door and Principal Skinner, whatever. So it's the same thing, right? It's all these things, and you get a talk track, you get essentially a pitch that I can go through. And it's tailored to, it's more open-ended, obviously, where I'm like trying to see what a person's worldview is on art or being photographed or themselves, and getting that information in like a tiny nugget of time so that I can maybe improve on that or enliven that or whatever it is for an hour or two photo shoot. So, for example, tomorrow I have 2 or 3, I think. And it's like from different countries, one hasn't been in New York for very long. One has been in New York for a while.
Wow.
So it's like going from door to door, basically. And you need to be able to think on your feet. So I do use some of those book things.
That's so cool to see, even in a more creative, less straightforward way, because you're not selling them anything. Well, I guess you're selling them an idea. It's always an idea, right? The idea of being comfortable to be photographed, which is a lot for some people sometimes. And that's a tough thing to sell someone on, and being able to extract from that. That's sweet. Now, to you, who are your, like, you kind of mentioned a name earlier that I wasn't familiar with, but who are photographers that you look at and you're like, this person, I want to be like that, or that you draw inspiration from?
So my absolute favorite photographer is a tiny Parisian woman named Sarah Moon. It's a nom de plume. I don't even know her real name. That's what she goes by, but she's still alive. She mainly shoots on Polaroid. So that big Polaroid thing I was describing, she shoots a lot of that stuff. In my opinion, she always has a little bit of this nightmarish / dreamlike quality to photos. She's masterful with color. She's masterful with the technique, because a lot of the things I like, on my Instagram, there's plenty of attempts at me being Sarah Moon-esque, where there's some like intentional blurriness happening so that our eyes linger on an image longer because we're so used to scrolling. I just want that extra millisecond or two. So that's some of what she gives to me in her work. It's emotional, story driven. Like there's a series about Little Red Riding Hood that's just haunting and beautiful. So yeah, I'm obsessed with her. Keeps me up at night, basically.
Let me pull her up. What's her Instagram? Or
I don't think
on
she
Instagram?
has one. Yeah, she's on for sure on Google. If you just type Sarah Moon, and it'll be up there. She just had a
French photographer.
A big retrospective at a museum in New York called Photographiska. So that was the first time I got to see her work in person, and it was hard. It was good. It was emotional.
What made it emotional for you?
Just seeing. I think the thing that I intake now with all art forms is I love seeing people's decisions. So she just makes decisions. And like the one that's the largest on this screen right now. Well, yeah, the first one. So a lot of my photos, I do this thing where I cut off the crown of the head at the top and cut off the tiniest bit on the bottom of the frame with the feet. It's purely because I became obsessed with this composition from Sarah Moon photos. These are fashion photos. I am a fashion photographer, fashion editorial. And this is, it's about the dress, but she gets away with wacky skin tone, blurry. You don't even see the details of the hems or the stitching or whatever. Nothing, but that's not what people cared about with her. They want the vibe, for lack of, for parlance of our time, they want this vibe because it has impact, deep impact, right? And whether it's black and white, colors, I think she's amazing at all of it, obviously.
Wow.
She's made a short film. It was really hard to find. I think I saw part of it on YouTube one time. But it's more about her decisions. And in essence, it's actually kind of tied to books somewhat, that she's not going into houses just to get a demo in. Never. She's only doing things that she knows she wants to do. And I need to work on that. Like, between you and me and the microphone, these shoots that I'm doing the next couple of days, these are money shoots. I'm just doing them to get paid. They'll be beautiful. The models will be like, oh my God, this is my favorite photos ever, probably. And that's fine and good. And I'm happy for them. But I don't want to do these shoots that I'm doing the next few days. But it's something to keep me going. It's reps. It's making sure my camera is working the right way. Making sure that one thing that I wanted to think about with using that light plus that like 12 foot thing of silk and having the light pointing this way to see if that's going to look good. It's all part of it for me. But like, she's at that point where she doesn't just take a photo to take a photo. I don't believe. I've never met her, but
wow.
Yeah. So there's like a handful of people that are similar to her in that regard, which they're very much more in the art space. She's done gigantic fashion campaigns as well, like Issey Miyake, Burberry, like large campaigns. Sorry, my chair just almost broke.
Oh, you're all good.
That's what happens when I talk about Sarah Moon, right? Now, so yeah, there's other people that are similar to her that are storytellers. I could rattle off tons of photo people, but yeah, it's kind of always that quality of maybe slightly confusing the viewer or letting the viewer make up part of the story, and that's infiltrating what I want to do with my larger projects as well.
That's so cool. I just think photography is sweet. My wife's a photographer. She's good at it. I think it's something that she should pursue more, but that's up to her. She's a psychologist and she's currently working, doing work as a longshorewoman. But I know that we've had a lot of conversations that she wants to get more into photography and get back into her like work. And I think she would just love this kind of, what you're saying as far as just like the creativity that is so open, right? I used to, let's see, when was this? 2018. I used to live, my landlord, I don't know if you know who Joel Sartori is.
I don't.
Joel. So Joel Sartori is the guy. He's a photographer for the National Geographic magazine, and he had this thing called the Ark, where he set out to take photographs of every animal possible
Oh, wow.
on Earth, and then like capture them. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, I can't
But
imagine.
like, just like again, so it's not fashion, right? I'm not. I don't know about fashion. I mean, I'm wearing a hat and shorts and a t-shirt. It's like fashion is not my thing. But I look at your photos and I feel the same way as when I saw his photos. It's just like, wow, this is just so cool. Like it just seems so captivating. I don't know. I think it's. I'm very interested. I'd be a terrible photographer, but the art itself is amazing to me more than like classical art of like painting or visual arts like that.
Yeah, dig
That's
it.
so
Thank you.
cool. I'm glad that you're doing what you love and you're good at it. You're good at it. You're good at what you
Thank you.
do. It's cool to see it's great to talk to someone who is clearly good at what they do and they love what they do. I can feel that from you. That's awesome. Um, Also, I'm into art from like I don't know if you see my studio
Yeah,
art.
I saw a little bit some of these like screen prints, right? Or those are
Yeah.
some spray paint?
Yeah, they're like graffiti. This is actually a cool story.
Yeah.
I don't think I might have told people about this on the air, but I'm not sure. But this is from I bought these in Colombia when I was visiting. There's a neighborhood in Medellin called Comuna 13 or the 13th commune. It's like District 13, I guess, if you will, if you want to literally or if you want to figuratively translate it. But long story short, it was the hellhole of the world. It was like the most dangerous neighborhood in the world at the time. It's also known as Pablo Escobar's crib, like his birthplace area. Poor, ton of violence and stuff. But then after Pablo died and the war started dissipating, the government came in and they commissioned all these like graffiti artists that had painted the streets with a bunch of like tags and said, "Hey, we're gonna allow you to do this, but the only rule is you gotta make it beautiful. Like you have to like express yourself in art and tell a story of this neighborhood that's now turning over and it's going to become in decades to come we're going to turn it over and instead of it having it be this shithole, essentially we're going to make it into a beautiful place that represents our country really." And they were like, hell yeah. So they went to town and they were all local, and so they eventually, years forward, it's been now a decade later or almost 2 decades later, and uh now you go there and there's like these art pieces that are being sold by the artists themselves locally. And so there's like so many different cool like amazing colors, and the lights are turned out so you can't really appreciate the colors for what they are, but it's just these beautiful images of art. And so yeah, I'm always fascinated by these kinds of like really cool urban but also like uh just I don't know, something when something catches me, I'm like, man, that's cool. And I saw all four of these. Like, this is the cover of my book, so ignore that one. But the other ones, I'm like, I saw them and I'm like, I have to buy these. Like, this is so cool. And I feel the same way about your art. Is what I'm trying to say.
Love it.
So cool, so cool. I'm looking forward to seeing like what your alphabet turns into a paragraph, turns into a book, turns into
Yeah.
a manuscript.
Yeah, me too.
I'll connect you with some other photographer friends we have here at the show that they do. Griffin Mims is another photographer that we have, and he's a book guy. He sold just one summer, and he does like sports extremes, specifically climbing photography. So he works with
Oh,
Adrian Bellinger, and he like does
where's
like
he
shoots
based?
he's in Tahoe, California right now. Griffin's
I,
dope. Go check out his episode. It's dope.
yeah, I will. I just got kind of back into climbing, but sort of feels like the first time I got into climbing because it's been 11 years. So, yeah.
I live in Portland, so I'm trying to get back into climbing too. But it's so, I mean, the first day after, you're like, okay, that was good for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost wanted to take a cold shower the other day because I was just like, oh, my arms are killing me. I was like, no.
Oh, oh man. That's great. Oh, now I kind of want to start talking about book stuff, but before we get into that, I do want to ask you a little bit about your time in marketing, because a lot of this podcast is really good at, or at least I feel like we do a good job of talking about business and entrepreneurship in today's world. And this could tie into your photography as well, but you worked for a decade in the SEO marketing, you know, digital marketing space, uh, which is a large umbrella, but it sounds like it was a lot about analytics and using those to grow a company. So I'm going to tap into that a little bit and ask for some advice. Maybe this is a more broad question, but generally speaking, that's still probably something you're very well versed in. What are like some mistakes, maybe some do's and don'ts when people start a business, or maybe not start, but when people own a business that they should be focused on to either avoid or do? So let's just do like a list, maybe if you want, of like do this, and then on the list of don't do this when it comes to like marketing and SEO. Like, why is it important? Why should we care? You know, the general message of that. I know it's a broad question, so if we need to break it down, that's fine. But
Yeah,
I think
and
this
let
is
me
important to
know.
talk about.
Sure, let me know what could be helpful once you hear the first part. So the caveat I'll give is my focus for a while was gigantic, right? So it'd be like Nike is figuring out how to spend $1 billion in advertising.
Okay.
So it's like a little bit different in that, we were using analytics, looking back. So using media mix modeling, looking at 3 or 5 years worth of data to predict the future using all these algorithms and smart math on saying, in general, you should put 10% of your budget towards social. We didn't even get to say like, do Instagram sponsored posts with influencers. Like we just said, do this with social. And then we'd connect with those other teams that were like all the nitty gritty ones, right? And the SEO team and the yada yada team and the TV team and the
Email marketing and
email marketing,
sure.
right? But in the beginning, and maybe some of the distilled learnings, if you will, were always get to the audience, right? And in any meeting, I had a meeting at Audible at Amazon, and I told this story. This was kind of a very book day, actually. Well, pun intended. But
I was gonna say,
yeah.
It's an audiobook day.
So I went in there, and my ex-girlfriend had signed up for Audible on my Amazon account. She wanted some books or whatever. I didn't know that I was still paying for it. And it got sent to my email, but it was in like one of those tabs, and it was like, Audible, you have a credit or whatever. And I had been paying for it for years, and we had been broken up for years at that point, and I didn't even know. Well, it's bad on me, but so I went into this meeting. I was just doing my pre-approach, right? And one of the things they were wanting to talk about was email. The people in-house were saying email might not be the most efficient. So a lot of what we did was talk about efficiency. So to your previous question, find the ECPA, the most efficient cost per acquisition for whatever that is for you. That to me is the metric that matters. So you have cost per clicks, you have how much, how many eyeballs came to my website, blah, blah, blah. What is the acquisition that matters? It could be people who download podcasts. It could be newsletter signups. It could be someone asking for a quote for a photo shoot or following you on Instagram, whatever those acquisitions are that you have as goals. Figure out as best you can what the cost is for that, and then optimize for that cost across all the different channels that you're playing in. So if you can't measure a channel, maybe figure out how to move that money away, unless it's like you think it's very pivotal. Because the most marketing nowadays, it's pretty close to being measured. So I would say do all the measurable channels of marketing. You're going to have owned media and earned media where people Google book sales or podcasts, interesting podcasts, and they're going to come to you without clicking on something that you paid for. So that's great. That's going to still exist. So you don't have to optimize that. That's just going to exist. Anything you do on the paid media sides are going to raise those earned and owned media sides. So that's one thing I'd say. But a lot of what we'd focused on was finding the audience and figuring out if you're interacting with them in a pleasurable way for them or not. So for me, I told this story at Audible where I was like, hey guys, I didn't know that I was paying for this. and all these emails have gone unanswered. I have credits that I haven't even downloaded books in forever. And I might cancel because when I was doing preparation for this meeting, I found these emails and I was thinking, wow, I've been paying for Audible for so long. I don't even use it. I should cancel. So what would you do for a person like me? And everybody's heads in the room are just going back and forth like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what we were talking about the other day or whatever.
I told you, Steve. I told you, Steve.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't listen.
Yeah. And, you know, at that time I was whatever, probably 30s, early 30s, urban professional. Like I fit all these demo buckets for them, but it was like a slightly different focus than they were thinking was a focus. But it was also a liability. So there's all these moving levers, right? That's like, well, if we try to reach out to that audience and then all of them cancel, then our revenue is going to go down by that. So there's all these things you got to take into account. Price of paper goes up, and so books or ebooks audiobooks are going to be more interesting. So we took all those things into account, right? So that was why it was like a very holistic, consultative approach. And as much as you can, maybe in any business, that would be my advice, is to think about all those aspects. You know, you don't have a data scientist crunching all these numbers and doing an algorithm specifically for you, but you can kind of, you know, your business well, any person that is, right? And so take all those data points that you can grasp, think about some that you maybe can't grasp, just to think about them, because why not? You know, it's a late summer, so people are going to sell less lawnmowers right now than they would at this time last year because it was an early summer. It's like all those things can play into anybody's business, and you just don't forget about those things. That's what I would say. So that's more about how we would approach every single channel for a business, and that can go all the way down to a mom and pop, right? It might be more hyper local or word of mouth focused, but focus on the things that are measurable, that move your business, that move your business, that you can tangibly see.
Now, okay, so I'll give you, so not to get your free advice, because I'm not paying you for this advice, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to use our podcast as an example, because we have a very niche audience. Like, I don't know how much more niche you can get.
Yeah.
Someone who sold books door to door at least one summer who would find this podcast, right? So what would you do for a more niche? Because like Nike wants to sell shoes. Shit, everybody needs shoes, man. Like, the demographic on that is giant. The market share is huge. At best, we have 100,000 people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? So,
so that's where I would disagree with you, right? So who's your audience?
Well, so
this is rhetorical. So who's your audience? Your addressable market is people who listen to podcasts, not people who listen to podcasts who sold books. So I would try to focus efforts on gaining new people to come to the channel, come to subscribe, and people who love hearing about different career paths, coming of age from college to adulthood, or whatever, all the topics, better than me, over 200 plus episodes, all the topics that exist in life that are intriguing beyond just book sales. Book sales is the platform that's like this crazy, hilarious thing that's a center thread. And just now that I've been on here, there isn't that much like book-centric stuff. And if someone is that interested, they can read about it or email you, or you could probably send them interesting stuff about books, the book sales portion of the podcast. But you get people here who are just interested in like, holy shit, this guy didn't graduate college and he worked at Google. And this guy just runs this podcast. This guy has a life insurance business. This woman has started her own beauty skincare line, whatever it is, right? That's what people want to hear about in everyday life. And there's podcasts probably that are less interesting because it's maybe more about how they started the business. Like, this is about how they grew into being a business person. So entrepreneurship side, I would think there's all kinds of probably YouTubes and things where people are, this is how you got to start your business and you got to do these 10 things or whatever. And it's all snake oil, and those people haven't started a business or done anything maybe. So everybody who you have on here is probably, well, they have done it because they did it in books, and they've jumped off of that point into something else. So we're all like life morphers in a sense, that we did that thing, gave us skills, or we learned our strengths or our weaknesses, and then we morphed into something else, or did it multiple times. So I would say, who's the TAM, the total addressable market? Who's that? Anybody who listens to podcasts, entrepreneurs, and then focus on those. And people are going to come and they're going to hear some of those like threads and those interesting tidbits that they wouldn't get in. And like, if you interviewed me on a panel for my company and at an ad tech conference, like, how'd you get into this? Well, I worked at this startup and then now at Google, and like, they're not going to get any of the insight into like how I like approached it and the nuances, and when I was a baby and making tiny dollars, and then like, it was crazy. So hearing that, like, for me, just, I'm the one saying it on this particular episode, but in others, I can imagine it being very insightful for people of all career stages.
Yeah. No, you're right. And you know, this is interesting because this is the way that, so there's two things. Sorry if we have this conversation, people are either about to click off or this is really interesting. I think it's interesting, but you know, when it comes to when we first got started, we started monetizing. People, you know, one of the biggest questions that people within our team had was like, how are we going to grow this? And I was like, in my head, honestly, like, I know there's value in having, right now, at least, all our audience, or the majority of our audience, are book people, which is great. And we need it. That's like our maybe target market, like our avatar, right? As you would call it. But at the same time, I think that this is, Southwestern itself is interesting enough, like the way Tiger King was interesting, where it's like, you know, it's just so crazy that people go, I got to hear about what the fuck this is crazy, right? And we have definitely enough stories like that even the person that didn't sell books. And so we, you know, it's interesting that you're saying anybody who listens to podcasts, because that's exactly right. You know, it's going to funnel, right? We're talking about like the biggest, you know, and people hear about funnels all the time, but it doesn't matter what your business is. You got to go broad, and then people trickle down to the point where the core audience is still probably going to be book people, but they just heard about us because, you know, their friend recommended it to them because they were into entrepreneurship, or because they were just into podcasts that talk about crazy, you know, cult-like experiences or whatever, you know, like someone was listening to a podcast about cults maybe, and somehow not that Southwestern's a cult, but we put the cult in culture for sure, right? So
and that leads itself to your pitch at the door, right? So when you're talking about this podcast, you talk about it in those terms, and it's like with this icing of book field, book sales, book terms. But if you talk about it as this like other thing that approaches higher levels of that funnel, that's when it probably starts reaching those other parts of that funnel slightly more, right? So it's like there's always going to be this undercurrent possibly, but if you know, ponytails, what is that, right? That could be anything. It just happens to have this anchor and this central theme that you have most of the people, or all of the people you've had on thus far, have had. But that's a way I would consider slightly amending the talk track in your own head, and then, you know, outwardly as well. That, and I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but just a thought process to have that if you want to reach up higher into the funnel.
Yeah, this is great. Well, and this also takes me back. So this is my book here. When I was writing this book, so this book's about my family moving from Colombia to the United States. We were going to be murdered. That's like the premise, right? Obviously, we didn't get murdered, because otherwise, if we did get murdered, you're having a really interesting experience right now, my friend. But But when I was writing this, Dylan Barr was helping me out, and he was like, "Who are you talking to?" And originally I wanted to say immigrants, but then I thought about it more, and I'm like, no, because an immigrant that reads my book is going to go, well, yeah, because they've experienced this. They know, they probably had worse experiences. I mean, mine were crazy, but they're probably tame. It's kind of like the flat tire compared to what the whole summer can have, right? So instead, I wrote it to like, I picked like one person in my head, and they were like, just have the conversation with that one person, and everyone else is going to just listen in when they read your book. That's what it's going to feel like, which I think is what worked. So for them, they were like, so my general audience was like a white Christian male who's older, who probably voted for Trump, not to make it political, but we're talking about citizenship, so it's kind of political, but who asks the questions like, why don't immigrants just come here legally, or what, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm going to talk to that person and tell the story to that person, assuming or trying to understand, because I lived in Nebraska at the time. I grew up in Nebraska, so that was very common around where I grew up. And so to me, that was a better way of approaching it, because it then became something where if I'm talking to that person, I am speaking for immigrants instead of to immigrants. And because I'm speaking for immigrants, I'm saying it and approaching it in a way that the other person who's listening, which is this ideal avatar human of a white guy that is hearing me for the first time explain, this is what happened to me, and this is why we can't come here legally, or whatever, right? And the same way I can apply this, where it's like, book people are going to get this podcast, and I can't change, for example, my guests should always be book people. That's going to be like a thing where it's like, they always have to be book people. But I think when we started putting up like the definitions of like the Southwesternisms or whatever, right? Like what PC means or whatever. That really started when we started focusing on like, all right, what happens when how do we scale this? We got to talk to the non-book people, because I think it's more interesting to them. Because again, kind of like immigrants, yeah, we get it. You almost died. They know what that's like. Southwestern people know what a flat tire is like, or what the rejection is. And it still speaks to them. It's not like my book doesn't talk to immigrants, right? But I'm speaking for Southwestern people, good, bad, and ugly, right? To say, this is what we fucking did in college, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, we had guns in our face, and people told us no, and we got arrested one time, and and it's all of us together talking to an outside audience. And so the way I think about it is, I'm talking to you, a book guy, but we're at a party of non-book people, and they're listening into our conversation because they're like, dude, what? It's crazy.
So that's an interesting metaphorical too. So at that party, what if someone comes up and they're like, I housed one of you guys, or someone says, I bought some of those books, or
which happens.
Says, yes, it does.
It happens in real life. Yeah.
Or someone says, I sold Cutco knives or something. So I would think I just said all those things specifically because those might be more branches of that funnel, not only for listeners, but also for possible people to have on for different perspectives that might lead to that mainline thread of entrepreneurship or whatever your main goals are to put out into the world. But yeah, I look forward to seeing what you do with it, and
which is interesting.
Super impressive.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. It means a lot coming from a guy that worked at Google doing this shit. Like, I'm just glad that we're on the same page, because it gives me hope that we're doing something right. But it's funny that you say that, because one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to have like a host family episode, whether that was a host family that sold, but because there is those, but then also like a host family that did not sell. And just be like, all right, so the first time you got approached by some college kid,
yeah,
go, hey, we need a place to stay. Like, what was that like? Just to get their insight. I think that we're having the same thought of like, this is what it's like, and that's an interesting episode to have. Man, thanks for that. I appreciate answering that, and sorry to get like a free counseling or consulting.
Oh yeah,
What do I help?
Yeah. Oh, you don't want to know my rate? No.
That's now before you decide a number, let's go into some Southwestern stuff, and kind of talk a little bit about your 2 summers, and then some rapid fire and then
Sounds good.
Ponytails. But okay, so I always like to wind the clocks back and I go, all right, man, like what happened? Who were you? Who is Jo
Yeah.
at in Texas
So
when someone said,
yeah.
hey, what are you doing this? Or Jack Clark come up to you and, hey, what are you doing this summer? What happened?
So this is April something ish.
Late.
Just wait. So April something of 2006. So I played volleyball in college. One of my volleyball teammates, I didn't know this, but he got hooked and he was going this coming summer and putting us in 2006. Jack Clark, in his wisdom, said to his new recruits, "Do you know anyone else?" So my buddy, who actually, I was thinking, who would I say you should have this guy on there? His name was Josh Ernst. He went on to start a business, sell a business, start another business, sell another business. He's done well. He's very smart. So he was younger than me slightly. He told Jack to call me. I was waiting tables to pay the bills at Texas Land and Cattle. I was literally there. And when I was waiting tables at this restaurant in Austin, you would get free bread. But I used to eat a lot of the bread. Like I would just walk to the kitchen and just scarf down a whole roll of this bread. So I was like in the back, like mouth full, trying to eat this bread before going out to like check on my tables. And my flip phone rings, and it's Jack Clark, who I've never met, don't know who he is. And he's like, I have a question if you'd like be interested in a summer internship, blah, 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 right? And I'm like, oh, sure. Josh said he's doing it, or he told you to call. Okay, like I'll show up. So 2 weeks later, I drove to sales school.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. And
I love people like you, man. I love people like you because they're people like me. I got recruited like the Wednesday of finals week. So when it's one of those like just fresh out, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, but Nashville sounded better than whatever I was doing. That's great.
Yeah, I'm surprised that my car was good enough to get there and last that summer. I don't know how. I think I just told my parents, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna see how it goes.
I was gonna ask you because usually when it's the late ones, I always like to ask the couple of questions. So here's some follow-ups. One, how did your parents react? Like when you told them what they say?
They were just, wanting to make sure I was going to be safe, which I didn't give them any information. And so, because I didn't have any information, right? So
you don't know.
I'm just like, I'm supposed to drive to Nashville and then I'm supposed to drive somewhere. I don't know. We'll see. And that's how it was then. I don't know what it even is now, but
it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's been the same since 1868. I feel like some things just don't. You're just like, I don't know where I'm going.
And actually, kind of funny story. Well, it ties into probably a ponytail that I'll tell in a bit. Later, after the fact, I think my dad says that he almost sold Bibles or something that was probably the like 1970s iteration, potentially even like the literal same, grandfathered version of the company. But in essence, like I was paying for life at that point for myself. So they're just kind of like, you got to do what you got to do. We're just going to check in on you, make sure you're safe. And I don't know. I just be honest. I don't know how I sold that back then, 2021. Yeah, that was crazy. So that's wild. Went to sales school.
And then another question, I always like to ask this specifically for people who got recruited a little later, but the money sounds great. And all this, the travel sounds great, but was it really that? Sometimes the answer is yes, it was just that, or was there anything else? Was it something about Jack? Was it like what? Sometimes the answer is yes, it was just the money, which is fine. But I feel like often it's actually not. It's actually more no. He had something I wanted, or this is the first time I got to challenge myself. Like, what was it for you that like really drew you out there? That made you go, let's do it. I don't know who you are, but I'm out.
For sure. Jack was enigmatic and just still to this day, craziest salesman ever. And as far as just his ability to not leave without it going towards the questions he wants to ask. He might not get the yes or no, but he's going to ask the questions he wants to ask. And so, yeah, I definitely saw him as in a C word, in a cult-like element where it was just impossible to not be attracted to his magnetism in that sense. The money, because that was when he had made like $100K or something previous summer. So to me, that was outlandish. And I was just thinking, if I could make $20K, that'd be better than what I make at Texas Land and Cattle. And I don't have to wait tables, and I get to start my own business and get college credit, quote, blah, blah, blah. So I definitely bought. Like, I was a buyer. I've always been a buyer. You show me an ad, that's exactly. So that's how that happened.
Let me show you something. I'm listening to this. I gotta show you something. It's gonna make you like, oh wait, oh, come on. Oh, hold on. I gotta see this. I got a picture of Mr. Jack Clark III right here for you, sir.
Oh, no way.
And all his glory. Look at that guy.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Was that year? I think that might have been that year.
That probably was 5,700 gross profit. I have to think. Because he had like 20 people under him. That might have been the year before. He looks slightly younger in that image.
But what a guy. Number 3 in the whole company. Look at him go.
What a character.
Just a stud. Look at him. That's awesome. So, okay. Yeah. All right. So you get to sales school. What was that like for you? You're saying you're a little bit more not sheltered, but a little more maybe not as outgoing as Jack was, as you mentioned. You get to sales school. That's got to be a trip, man, because sales school is like energy.
That's where I don't see it as the A negative, but that's where the cult aspect, the like mob mentality comes into play, and losing the cool card, like there's all those little anecdotes, which are all accurate and they're all worthwhile. Like, it doesn't mean that I need to do that in every single occurrence and every day-to-day happening for myself now. But a lot of those things are worth doing for most people. So I just bought in, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to do anything at sales school, right? You got to go knock on the binders. You got to go talk to this person, say these lines, show a book that you don't know how to show or whatever. So I just bought in, right? I'm a buyer, so I bought in. That was how it went.
Coachability. That's a key right there, is you got to be coachable. I mean, we had the same mentality, and I got sales school. I'm like, I have no idea who the hell anybody is. I don't know what anything means. I'm blank. I probably know less, right? I was in the force piece. You always used to joke that it's like, I probably knew -0 because I thought this was Southwest Airlines internship. So it's like, we're like not even in the ballpark of what we're actually doing.
Yeah, I guess where did you go that? I knew that one guy before sales school, and I don't even think I knew Jack, because I just met him at the like little round table, pitch meeting on campus. So I'd seen him in person, obviously, but I didn't know anybody. I only knew one guy.
That's so wild, man. And then where did you go that summer? Let's go into like your first. So like, first house, first store, first summer, first HQ. Like, let's walk through some of these. Where'd you go?
So I had 2 counties north of Atlanta. Super good compared
Marietta,
to my second summer.
Marietta.
North of that a bit. So I was in, if I remember right, it's like Cherokee County. Now when I'm watching like MSNBC voting night results, I'm like, oh God, I remember that county, and oh, that one too. But I remember one county was very kind of sparse. So when I drove in, I'm like, I don't even know. And this was, we didn't have iPhones, right? Or maybe some people did. I didn't. 2006.
No way. I mean, it just came out.
Yeah,
you'd have to be a college kid wouldn't have an iPhone.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a everyday consumer item.
So
Mark Cuban had an iPhone.
Exactly. So Jack's manager, Wade Floyd, which I don't know if he's been on the show, but
The number of times he's been mentioned. Wade, if you're listening, come on, man. We've been trying.
Wade, if you're listening, I did it. So come on, bro. Like, you can do it.
We'll just send him this clip. I have his number. I think I've called him. I'm gonna send him this clip and go, hey.
We've been friends over the years, less since I moved from Austin. But so if you're listening, I miss you, brother. So I remember pretty distinctly Wade just giving me a big ass map of this county. It's like almost a blueprint. Like, it was no details whatsoever. And so I'm like just kind of doing a little reconnaissance. And I'm thinking maybe over there is a good idea, but it's like, I have no idea what I'm looking for, obviously, right? So anyway, the other first year and I met up and we were like, well, we tried over there. I tried over there. Well, I tried over there. And then the second year, the manager that was going to be in our HQ was like, okay, I tried over there. And so then we all said, okay, let's go try over there, and we came back, I think first summer. I think then I just was tagging along with the manager and we knocked on this door, I think. And then we came back to it. Like, someone said, come back or something. I can't really remember, to be honest. And turns out that HQ was like the choice, perfect spot. It's 2 younger grandparents who had a whole upstairs. They had multiple rooms that were just unused. We were in like the kids' bedroom I'd never had growing up, like the A-frame vaulted ceilings. You could if I was there for a while, I could have like band posters up on the ceiling. It would have been so dope. And we had shitty beds that we were all in that same spot that like 9-year-olds probably slept on when we weren't there, because they had grandkids and all that. And so we were there for free and it didn't pay anything.
Wow.
Sometimes they would make us dinners and sometimes they would do our laundry as well.
Oh, dude.
And they were just generally the most beautiful people, the nicest, but we also respected them, right? Like, I will say the other first year was kind of an actual crazy person. But we were all respectful. Like, what we said was true, right? We're going to be out 5:59. We're all going to come back around 10-ish, 10:30 at night, out at 5:59 the next morning. And then on Sundays, we're gone all day. It's like we did the story. None of us were bullshitting and fucking around in the house and doing
beautiful.
Exactly. So I think they really enjoyed it. At the end of the summer, I gave a bunch of books to them for their grandkids. And I do regret I didn't keep in touch with them. Like, I was 21 and I should have, so that was first summer. And just a quick aside about the territory. I think someone had sold in part of one of those counties a couple of years before. So I encountered a couple saturation issues and I was like, oh man, this is hard. Nothing compared to second summer, but in that first county was not great. Second county, I had one neighborhood with like 3,500 homes. So I never left the whole summer, the rest of the summer. I was in that exact neighborhood the whole summer. And I mean, I made some beautiful maps with that shitty blueprint of a county map. And I think I still have that notebook somewhere. I think at my mom's house, she has that notebook with all those maps, hand-drawn maps.
Which the kids of today's world don't even know. The artwork it requires and the organization it
multiple
requires
highlighters
to draw a map. Now they have like Sales Rabbit on their iPad and it just tells them the name of the customer before you even get to the damn house. These kids won't never know the struggle of just you take a paper fucking map and you draw on a notepad that your interpretation of that map that makes sense to really only you. And it's like color coded and shit.
I wish that I had it next to me so I could just pull it up right now. That would be crazy. I know I have it, but
so we started this podcast November of 2020. I kept I still had them. I remember the day I threw them out was the day we moved out of my brother's house with Seth. So that would have been May 1st of 2020. So I had all my pre-approach pads. I had them all on May of 2020, and we started this podcast on November 2023. So, like, if I had held on for 6 more months, you could just like show and just look at it. I could hang it on the wall, and it would look beautiful. Like it was art.
well, I can after we get off, I'll text my mom. I know she knows where it is in a bin somewhere, and I'll get some photos just for something for you.
Yeah.
From my drawings if you want.
Maybe we'll print it on a canvas and just hang it up somewhere, or just like
hell yeah,
like have it like right here, just like next to the pony.
Yeah, I'll when's your birthday?
September. It's late September.
Well, what day?
I'll tell you after the podcast.
Okay.
I don't don't tell people my birthday at all. Actually,
we might have the same day.
Okay, we'll talk about it after the podcast. I'll tell you.
Keep some secrets from the masses.
Well, literally, I don't tell people because I hate it when people only call you for your birthday. You know what I'm talking about? It's either they call you. It's those people that just call you once a year and it's only on your birthday, but it's only because they want to feel special on their birthday, or like they'll message you, or worse, they put it on your Facebook and that's all they do. You know what I'm talking about? The only other time they call you is to recruit you for like another thing. And you're like, oh, you don't care. You don't. So. I don't know. I call my mom on my birthday and I take her out to dinner if I can, because it's more about her. She did all the work. I didn't do shit.
I mean, it's
cried
birth,
for 18 years.
It was the birth of the day of the birth.
Yeah, for sure. But I celebrate other days, but just not that day. But I'll tell you afterwards. I'll get it if you want to send it. We'll post it. We'll hang it up. It'll be great. So you're in Atlanta. You have these pre-approach maps. You got this neighborhood. You're crushing it. I mean, it sounds like you had a good first summer.
Yeah. So like first summer, right. I can't remember what I did. I think I was like 38 or 39 or 40 for first years. So it was like, it was in there. It was good. But I guess,
and at the time that was like the height. I mean, there was a lot of people going to sales school. It's not like being 40 number. Just for people to understand. Sorry to interrupt this again, but like now, if you're number 40, still a great job. But you're number 40 out of like maybe like 1,000 first years, or like even generously, let's say 2,000. But back then, it was like you were the first. You're number 40 of like 7,000 for or whatever. I don't know exactly what year or how many people each, but like during those years of Southwestern, there was a ton of kids. Every sales school. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. So that's not bad.
not too bad. Yeah. And actually, it's kind of part and parcel. It's for summers. It's sort of a ponytail, but I'll tell it quickly. So I was doing pretty good. I hadn't had a 0 day. I don't know what week it was. It was like 5th week, something like that. So I felt decent. So I had a 0 day on July 3rd. So then the next day is July 4th. And my manager is Jack Clark. And he's like, you're coming to follow me. You had a 0 day. You're coming to follow me. Saturday, July 4th. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like July 4th. And also like, I had a 0 day, And I'm thinking this is going to be tough. Like, it's a Saturday, people are partying. I've been doing well, we just talked about I was doing pretty good as a first year. So the spoiler alert is on that one day, Jack did better than my best week all summer. On July 4th.
What an asshole.
What an asshole. Yes. And the amount of free ribs, beers, burgers, that he didn't have any. He was just like, oh yeah, give it to him. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'll eat it. I'm like, I can't eat anymore. Because he was using that as a closing technique. He's like, oh, he loves ribs. Can he have a rib? And I'm just like, yeah, okay. But quick, funny Jackism. So we were playing the pine cone game. So as we run up to a house, if I could hit him with a pine cone, whatever part of his body I hit, he couldn't use that part of his body during the entire demo. So sometimes I kind of gathered a few. And when we got to this house, and I went bop, 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 and I got him in his leg, in his arm. So he's literally going like, you can't see, no right arm, hopping on one leg, holding the book, gets into the house, in the house still, doing his book with one hand. He's trying to write the order with his offhand because I hit his right hand, or no, his left hand because he's left-handed, whatever. It's insane. And I'll tell it because it's hilarious, and it's one of my like stories that I say about one of those calls. And he's showing the Mufus, and he's like, it's got, and it's so caveat, it's someone who's English is their second language, but they're following along. They've got kids, they need the books, right? Everybody's getting something. Yeah. So we're going through the Mufus. I think their kids were like 9th grade or something. He's going through the Mufus on purpose. So he's like, it's A for apple, B for bicycle, C for chlamydia, D for dog. And I'm just like, what did you say? And then he's like, E for elephant. And he just keeps going. And I'm like barely holding it together. And the person is just looking at the book, nodding.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's 2 books. Okay. It was absolutely insane. And then he's like, oh, we got to go. Like, we weren't even, that was purely like a mental, and then we're off to the races. We got these meetings lined up, whatever. And then he drops like 500 on the day, whatever it was. So that was my one of 2 follow days I ever did. I did one second summer, but that was the better one.
Jeez, man. 4th of July's, they're the best. I mean, we had a full, actually, it's by far our most listened episode. Well, I don't know by far, but our most listened to episode on Anchor, which is Spotify and Apple Podcasts combined, is our 4th of July special, where we just got like a couple of top first years, and we're like, let's just tell the best 4th of July stories. And man, we didn't expect it to be that big, but I just love it when people bring up the 4th of July because it's so true. You just sitting there and you think it's going to be like and actually there's plenty of people who are currently selling books that are listening to this. And maybe if you're listening to this, it's not 4th of July yet. Don't worry about it. It's if you have a bad experience on 4th of July, it's like a one-off. That's like you are the anomaly, because normally speaking, I remember being so nervous about it because you're interrupted, especially because all summer they tell you don't go to houses where there's a lot of cars in the driveway because it means that they have company, which means you're probably not going to sell something. But literally that's all basically it is on that day, because everybody's barbecuing and doing stuff. So you're just trying to do gravy, and you show up and people are in a great mood. They're like, especially if you got your names rolling, especially since it's right in the middle of the summer where you already kind of figure shit out.
Yeah.
And you got some names that are powerful, and you're like, this person bought, and they're like, oh, come on in. You hungry? You want a burger? America. And you get to like, it's a great day to sell. It's a wonderful day to sell, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was very impressive, infuriating and impressive. But
that makes sense. So why did you decide to come back? How did you know you wanted to do it again? Because it didn't sound like, from what you've alluded to, the second summer was not the same experience, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I had fun. I had money. I made money. I had fun. I was still a buyer. I was bought in that, if I just recruit 10 people, then I'm going to make so much more money. But I didn't focus that heavy on recruiting. So I think I had 4 people that were saying, we're going to go. And then like we get down to brass tacks, really close. 2 people drop out. 2 people do end up going. Both of them were volleyball players. So they were on the B team or whatever. So it was kind of an in-house, like I was given the name by one of my teammates. And I think they were freshmen or just finishing their freshman year. So they're younger than me, not by much now in standards now for me, but at the time I was older and obviously a second year. I think to this day, I still think they could have done well. Neither of them finished the whole summer. One went
Early
quick.
champions.
One went quick, pretty home pretty quick. The other sold, did well, had a couple, bad weeks or maybe a couple of bad experiences too. And then I ended up delivering for him at the end and selling lots on top of his buyers. So that actually helped me quite a bit there at the end to salvage a little bit. But I was just in a saturated, it had been sold recently in the Twin Cities. So the weather was much better than Atlanta.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's got to be a
Yeah.
beautiful summer up in Minnesota.
Yeah, it was great. People were great. It was just tough territory. Not a lot of big brick. And I think I just did better there. But I did have, was it second summer? Yeah. So that's my other 0-day story, which I can also tell as a little, I'm just throwing in ponytails for the Ponytails podcast. So my second, well, actually, no, I just misspoke. It wasn't a 0-day. It was about to be a 0-day. All day grinding. And I had this one meeting set up, and it was like supposed to be at 9 p.m. when both mom and dad were going to be home. Mom was off working. Dad was the one who's like, come back. And I knew the address was in a trailer park, and it was like on the edge. So I'm like, this is the longest drive back to HQ. I gotta go. And I show up, and they had like this beautiful dinner that they had prepared specifically because they knew that I was coming. It's like squash that they grew in the front yard. The little kid was like, I can't remember how old, probably 6. He was showing me his fish tank. He knew all the like scientific genuses and all the names. And he was like, do any of your books have calculus in them? Like a 6th grader. And I'm like, this kid, love this kid. And they ended up buying like a lot. I can't remember how much, but it was one of my biggest customers ever, let alone, having it be the last one of the day, the suicide call almost, right? Pony.
Ooh,
It was
pony.
It was for sure my biggest personification of the pony story, right? Where I considered, maybe not, but then I just went, and it was one of my favorite things of the whole experience, really. The kid and the dad, because he was so hyped on his zucchini and all the things. And yeah, it was good.
But to testament right now, even the fact that, so this would have been 2007, so that's 16 years ago, like 16 years back, and you're still like, that family still touches your heart in a way, right? Like, and for you, that's that family, but I have that family, and pretty much everyone listening has that family where there's a moment where you're sitting there going, this works, and I'm glad I didn't give up. You're thinking, this is what Mort was talking about with all this manure. There's gonna be a pony somewhere. You're thinking, like, I want to be a dad like this someday, or like, there's like so many things that cross your mind, that when you witness kindness in such a way, when you witness a reward for hard work, not monetarily. I mean, fuck, who cares? That money that you spent, that money that you made from that sale, you probably spent on whatever dumb shit, probably as an early 20-year-old. I know I did. I mean, maybe I'm speaking for you, but generally speaking, right? Who cares? Like that, who cares about that money? It's not about the money at that point. It's about who you became, what you learned about yourself, what you learned about the world, how to treat people. I remember thinking when I came across that family, for me, or there was multiple, but when you come across those families, you think like, this is when someone knocks on my door at 9 p.m. and they seem fine. There's just a college kid trying to sell books or something similar. Like, I'm going to make them food, and I'm going to sit down. It just, there's just so much more than just the money there. That really is. Did you really sell books if you didn't have that experience? You know what I mean? Like it's just like
I
so
feel
unique.
like, yeah, you probably found something similar in that, regardless, whether it was the way someone surprised you, even if they didn't buy, that you,
Yeah.
because that I still would have felt all those same things if at the end of the night they were like, damn, we just can't afford it.
Yeah.
It
And you have those
maybe
too.
next year, right?
Yeah.
And I would have been like, totally fine, and looking back now, I've probably been like, you could just do with these couple of books. You don't need those other. Like at the time, I was like, yeah, let's sell this
Yeah.
bag. But
You're doing your job. Yeah.
yeah, and I was convicted that if the kids actually used the books, they were good, right? So
Yeah.
and,
And that kid probably did.
and that's why I was always like, I was knowing that he was the kid. I was always felt good about that one. Yeah.
That's sweet. Because there's families that you leave, you're like, they're probably not going to use those. Which, and you're fine because they didn't care and you didn't care. And it was just like, they were maybe even just helping you out. You're like, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you would leave that house and you're like, that kid's going to use them
Yeah.
for sure, that's a cool feeling. And that family kind of makes you like, that's also the same family where you would bump into them at the grocery store after a Sunday meeting. You're like, hey, it's the Thompsons or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, and like they knew you. And then you go back for deliveries and they're
Yeah.
even like, that's even a better experience because now you're like, it feels like your family in a way, but you've only met them for 25 minutes or an hour or whatever, an hour since it was the last stop. Like, it's just there's something that, and here's the deal. And we're talking door to door, and I'm sure other door to door people experience this too. I'm not trying to deny or not validate other people's experiences, but that's almost unique to books because most people that sell door to door at that point in time, they would have just gone home. And doesn't speak anything about their character, but given the culture that we set and like the standards that Southwestern people have for those kinds of calls, that's a victory from the jaws of defeat that only really book people can feel door to door.
Yeah.
I think I would venture to guess. I don't. Maybe I'm assuming, but it's unique.
I agree, and those are some of the things that sometimes happen in corporate life, but hardly ever, right? So when it happens, it feeds you for so long, which is why it's the namesake of this podcast. Like it has such an impact, right? And it's really, to your point, it's not about closing that deal. It's about just going and doing it and just see what happens. And more often than not, with that attitude, you're going to sell something because you're not like, I got to sell something right now. So yeah, just having that mindset of like, no, it's just my last door, one more door. The answer lies behind the next door. Like those mantras that proliferate in all things, I think.
Dude. Ooh. That's so good. Oh man. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions and then some ponytails. Is that cool?
Sure.
This is awesome. We have to have you and Jack back. Maybe an episode with all y'all. Who else was in your org? Shane Weathers in your org?
I remember the name. I think one of my favorite people then ended up selling, I think 4 summers after me. She was, I think, first summer when it was my second summer was Phoebe Tucker. And for a minute, she worked at Google back in the day, but I think she's still in Austin. So if Phoebe's listening, she's a real one.
We'll have to try to contact Phoebe. Also, Andrew Benson is a buddy of mine that sold with me, and he's at Google now, and he's like doing a lot of analytics stuff for them. Really cool. I've approached him a couple times where he'll like really graciously will say, "Hey, here's what you should do." Like he'll help me out and put me in the right direction. So
nice.
Huge help there. All right, so this is the we call it Will Metcher's. Will Metcher's another one of our partners. He's at Southwestern Consulting. If you guys want to hear more about Will and what he's up to there, he is looking for more people to join him in changing people's lives. So check it out. Let us know. But here are the Will Metcher rapid fire questions for this episode. All right, here we go. Number 1, what was your favorite territory, county that you sold? I think I know the answer since you've kind of alluded to this, but I'm assuming it was the 3,500. I don't know the answer for you.
Yeah, that's it. And I just can't remember. It might have been like Gwinnett. It's right around there. Cherokee, Gwinnett. And I literally can't even remember now. But I could look back, but that was it.
Hell yeah. Now, what was your favorite kind of turf? Was it country, middle, low income country, high income country? Big Brick Suburbia. Like, what was your?
Yeah,
You had to do it again.
Big Brick Suburbia. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, just pow, 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 just
Yeah.
knocking them out. Quick nose.
Yeah, quick nose and big yeses.
Hell yeah, those are good. If you know how to work it, that's where the money's at. What was your favorite advanced sales? If you listen to them, I don't know if you listen to advanced sales or like the CDs that people would give out, or like where you like would listen to the tape throughout
Oh
the day.
yeah, that's a good point. I know I really liked one. Huh? It's like reaching into the annal. It might have been a Lee McCroskey.
Yeah,
if he had
everybody.
one.
Yeah, he had a couple.
Yeah.
Any Lee is good though.
Yeah, I think
like,
I think it was.
I'm gonna listen to Lee and laugh a lot. That's what you do. All right, favorite HQ of the 2 summers, or maybe you had more than one, or maybe you had more than 2. I don't know.
The first one was definitely the best, but the second one, I had to move out of the first spot, and then I moved in with Jack Clark, so that was crazy, because he's crazy. I still remember the song that he woke us up to every single day, and I can't listen to it. I can't even. Sorry, can't remember the name of it, but that one was fun. And it was a harder summer, so the HQ meant more to me.
Fair enough. Now it's funny because Jack Clark was so like cool, calm, and collected when we were doing this interview. So when you say he's crazy, I'm like, oh, I feel like we need to get Jack and get some more stories. But
Yeah.
that's all right. Your favorite product to sell or tack on?
Well, I sold a lot of the sticker books. I forget,
yes.
like the big set of them. There's like 14 of them, if I remember right.
The Ask Me's. Yeah.
Ask Me's. Because that was like, I think the most efficient unit per like dollar to me. It just was like the easiest sale. And it was the like most fun, and it touched all the learning centers, right? You get the tactile, the visual, all that stuff.
Rings all the bells. That makes sense. Your best sales day. Now, this could be in units because some people do units and care about that. Don't have to be units, or it could be like it could have been that July 4th day. Like, what was your best sales day in your opinion?
My best sales day, which was one of the ponytails I might tell, so I can tack on in a minute. But it was a day with 10 customers, and I'll tell you why it was the best when I tell the story. I can't remember units, but it was like around 200. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just I think I only knocked on like 14 doors and sold to 10 or something like that. Yeah.
No, not the 30 demos. Okay.
Yeah.
We judge you so much for that here on this show, actually.
It might have been more, but I'll tell you the reason.
You are so judged. You are so judged. It's funny to be an adult. Now, a lot of people often say in the real world when they mean not in the book field, which is a whole funny sentence, I think, in general. But like, it's funny how much nobody gives a shit later on in life that you didn't hit 30 demos that day. You know what I mean? Like, at the time it matters, and you should do what you say you're going to do or whatever. It's important, and you should learn from that, right? But like 16 years later, you're like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You're not taking a picture of a model and go, but did you know one time I only had 14 dollars? She's not gonna be like, oh wow.
Oh, come on.
Like, what are you doing? Well, you might as well just not have this shoot now.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite breakfast spot?
That was first summer, because it was just amazing. We went to the same spot every single time. It was called something Smokehouse, and the owner, I'll never forget. Well, our last day of the summer, the waitresses were crying when we were leaving, that whole thing. And the owner, I was flabbergasted because he would just do like multiple crosswords while we were at our super fast dinner. And then now I like crosswords, so I do crosswords often. And it's kind of because of that guy. Because I'm like, if he could do one in 5 minutes, like I could probably do one in 5 minutes. And I've gotten better at crosswords, but he was also just the nicest guy ever. And it was a real.
You got to be great at trivia.
Pretty good, pretty decent.
If you're good at crosswords, I mean, nobody that's shitty at trivia is good at crosswords. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. Yeah.
There's got to be some good trivia nights in New York City.
There's good ones. Yeah. I've
Ooh.
gone, it's been since pre-COVID that I was going to trivia, but I haven't
Yeah.
been in a minute.
When I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, Amy, our producer who you met earlier, we used to, her and I and like a couple of other friends of hers and who became my friends, we would do a trivia night and like we kick ass. Like it was actually like we were strategic. Like I got the sports. This person
Yeah.
has like the U.S. presidents. Like we all, it's like a team of 6, and it was dope. It feels nice to contribute to something like that because you're like,
Yeah.
all right,
The
I knew
squad.
that worthless stat was about Formula One pit stops was going to be important someday. Like
Someday.
I knew that was worth a free beer that we just won.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this actually might be a ponytail, I'm guessing from what you've alluded to. But our last rapid fire question, which again could transition us into ponytails, is what was your best follow day?
Well, that was when I was following Jack, but I'll just transition it into my best day that someone followed me,
Okay.
which is also what I consider my best day with 10
Okay.
customers.
So for people listening, before you get into this, so ponytails is what the whole episode's culminated into this. So this is where we ask our guests to hold on to this story towards the end, or multiple stories. It depends on our guests, whatever they want to do. But it's like the most memorable or the funniest or something that like just really stuck with our guests since their time selling books. So without further ado, my man, this is your ponytails. Whether it's just this one story or multiple stories, it's totally your call. We've had a variety, but man, what a fun episode it's been.
Awesome. Well, yeah, the first one's the one it's really a good one, and then I'll end with one that my manager might have mentioned to you just as a sign off one. So the ponytail around what I consider my best day, and the best day when someone was following me, was my second summer, and I was in Twin Cities area. So I-35 corridor, I'm from Texas, down south on the I-35 corridor. But during summers for many years, for almost 30, my dad coached basketball camps, and he would travel everywhere and coach these basketball camps. So anyway, I was kind of not doing great, and generally just like, it's not as good as my first summer vibes. So one night I'm just going to bed, and Jack was my roommate, and he was like, come on, tomorrow, I think you're going to have a really good day, so just get in the right mindset. I was like, all right, fine. I'll try, Jack. And so in the morning, my dad out of nowhere shows up at the house at HQ or at breakfast. I can't remember, either or. So he had been doing a basketball camp in Kansas City and drove like freaking 8 hours or more. I don't even remember, just to come up and say, hey, because he was like in between camps. And so he's going to follow me. So at that point, what would it have been? Like mid-50s dad is going to follow me on the book field all day. And then I've been kind of negative, and I'm like, oh God, now I like gotta turn it on. But it was probably just the thing I needed, and we spend a lot of the day talking and catching up in the process and why I thought it was important. But then I had these meetings and I was like, I think I'm going to sell to every single one of these people. That's why I was light on demos that day also. But we just killed it, and he was not great at the following like protocols. He would stand too close, or he would like pipe in and be like,
Come on, Dad.
I'm a teacher, and that is better than the way we teach fractions or whatever. And like, I'm like, just no, just. And I would like lay out the closing question and let the silence fill the room, and he'd be like, and a lot of people think that's a good price or something. I'm like, no, come on,
no.
come on, bro. But he's very genuine guy, and it's one of my favorite days I ever had with him, and I don't get to have any more with him. So it's a really good memory that I have from like the craziest thing I ever did was this book sales thing. So I'm glad it happened.
Wow. Wait, sorry to ask, so did your dad pass away?
He passed away in
Oh,
2020.
oh, dude, that's tough.
Yeah,
So sorry.
so one of those couldn't dream it up memories, and if nothing else, now I've obviously with the hindsight, just to do books, just to have that one day, basically
Yeah.
pays for the rest of them.
Dude, that's so fun. That's such a fun memory.
Yeah. And I had told him
That's
actually
not a
because,
bad price.
right? And I told him because he was following me, and I was like, when I followed Jack, I was throwing pine cones, and this is the game. So he and I were doing the pine cones. It was like this full, moment of it all, and we did some funny shit too. Like I used to do just a super fast ponytail. I used to do this thing where when
Right.
people would would at the door they would try to get rid of you or say like, oh, we're all set or whatever. I would do this thing because I my whole the pitch was I'm that college kid from Texas, and so I would say like, okay, no problem. Well, like as we say in Texas, and then I would just make up whatever came in my head. Like it's literally I would just be like, as we say in Texas, don't let the frog legs get into your watch, or something. Like just make something
Just
up
fucking
and like nod at them, and they'd be like, oh yeah, and I just run off. So I did that a bunch, and then I was like, okay, you got to say the next one. And he's like, just like we say in Texas. And then I don't remember what he said.
That's so good.
So yeah, that was a fun thing we did. And actually, I tried that one time, and the person was laughing, and they were like, I don't think I understood that. And I was like, well, let me come inside, and I'll tell you how it works. And then they're like, okay. And I was like, hell yeah. And
Let's go.
so then I put the book bag by the sofa, and I went in the bathroom, and I fake went to the bathroom, just give them a second to like be cool that I'm in their house. I started doing that on occasion when somebody was kind of reticent. And so I'd come back out, and I'm like, all right, so where were you? And she's like, actually, you were leaving. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oops.
But I got in the house, sit down, check.
Just so you know what I'm doing really quick. Boom.
Yeah,
Demo.
yeah. So then
Oh,
I
that's so good, dude.
I had lots of funny, crazy things with stay-at-home moms that were excited to talk to people. Um, I had some guns, some random little things in more in the South, not in my first summer. But I was
Having it in
also
Georgia.
yeah,
Yeah, you get that a lot, yeah.
and I was also just like I was just kind of clueless. I just went for it, first summer. Second summer, I was more like, oh, this might be a little sus over here. But first summer, yeah, it was a little wild. So that's when it must have been a day or two before Mother's Day, and I was trying to mail something to my mom for Mother's Day. And there wasn't a post office, like I think in my county, or there was one by our HQ, but there was one like in the next county over. So I was like, didn't know where I was, but I like asked someone where the thing was. I went to this post office, dropped off the thing I was going to mail to my mom, and then went to this gas station right near there to get some gas or get a Gatorade. So that's when this crazy event happened, where like at a gas station, you have all the gas stalls or whatever in the front parking spots, and then like the side parking spot, like there's an ice machine, and so it's not like facing the front. That's where I was over there. Went in to get a Gatorade, and I came back out, and these guys like pull up to my car with a van, and they just pull me in the van, and they're just saying shut up, and they put a hoodie thing like over my head, and they're just like holding me into the van, and they're just like shut up, and I'm at first I'm just like, this probably Jack, or it's probably somebody that's like it's a hazing thing or something that I don't know about.
This is a cult. I knew it.
But then I'm like, I'm so far off the beaten path. Like, I'm not even anywhere close to where I know the other person who's selling in this county's been. I'm just like on this border between my county and this other county. And like, I'm nowhere near where Jack's selling. Like, he's not going to get that far. Like, my head's just like trying to do the math. And then they start calling me by the wrong name. And I'm like, oh, these are just idiots. And they think I'm someone else. And they're like, we know you with your silver Mazda, you blah, blah, blah. And like, that's the car I had, but I wasn't for Kevin, I think. And they're just like kind of holding me, but it's all like going fast, right? You know, it's not happened to me that often. But then I'm like,
that you get kidnapped. It doesn't happen often to you
in the middle of Georgia. Yeah.
As a Colombian, let me tell you, it does happen often. But I can't imagine the middle of Georgia that's a
yeah. And for like just a silly like 150-pound, I could grow like one facial hair when I sold books. So like for those of you who see me on this now, I was a baby. And so then in my head, I'm like, okay, these are idiots. They have the wrong guys. So then I start just like laughing and saying like, you guys are fucking idiots. I'm not the person you're talking about. I'm from Texas. I go to the University of Texas. My sister is this person. I do this. My parents live in this town. Da, da, da. I'm just giving them all these facts. And I'm like, I'm literally here in Georgia for this summer job selling kids books. Like I gave them a demo almost.
Hey, check. It counts.
Yeah, I counted that one. And so they're like, shut up, you know? And then we finally get to some place and they like pull the hoodie thing off and they just shove me over into this space. And this guy comes in and he's just like, where's like your brother? They're asking me about some other person. And I'm just like, I've been telling these fucking idiots over here that I'm the wrong person and you don't know who you're looking for. It's not me. I'm from Texas, yada, yada. But at this point, I'd also started mentally like rewatching like Ong Bak and all these Muay Thai movies. And in my head, I'm just like, what am I going to do? I'm like mentally prepared to murder if I have to with my hands.
To save your life.
And so my brain is kind of like trying to get them logically to understand they've made a mistake. But if not, I got to punch some people in their throats or something. I don't even know,
Yeah.
you know? And not that I'm good at that, but I was like thinking that I could do it. And I just keep going on this like tirade of facts about me that is all about my actual life, not the life of this person. And they're finally like, God, I don't know what the deal is. You have this guy's car? And then they asked me about the car for a long time. Long story short, that finally we're just like, okay, like we get it. And they just like take me in the car a little bit away from where we were and just pull over at a stop sign, open the window or the door and just kind of like shove me out. And I'm just like in the middle of another place that I don't know.
Oh my God.
And so then I hitchhike and I didn't know where to tell them. So I'm just like, there's a post office near the border of this county and this county. And one person stopped, didn't pick me up. Second person stopped, didn't pick me up. Third person picked me up and then took me back. It was like it was like a 15-minute car ride back there. And I get back to the gas station. My car is there. My wallet is sitting on my seat. Like my Gatorade's on the top of the car. And I just get into the car, open the Gatorade. I'm just like, wow, that was crazy. So then I kind of am like, you know, fuck this county. And I drive back to my territory and I go to, I don't know about you, but y'all other book people, but I had the one parking lot that had the good shady trees at a certain time of day.
Oh yeah.
So I went to that spot just to sit in the not heat for a second. And I texted or just called Jack. And I was like, hey, Jack, I might me quitting early today because this thing happened. And he was like,
My God.
what? And he was like, I mean, do what you need to do. Maybe knock on one more door. And I was like, you know what? I do have one meeting. I'll go to this one meeting. And I went to this other meeting and they didn't buy. So not a ponytail, but I did go to that
That is a
meeting.
ponytail.
And that was crazy. And I never went to that county again. So, oof.
Did you didn't report him to the police? Like, hey, 3 guys are looking for a guy in a Mazda. It wasn't me.
I was just like, I'm not going back to that county.
Oh my God.
I'm flushing that out. You know, I don't want to have to do anything in regards to this. I didn't even really want to tell Jack, you know, and then on Sunday meeting, he was like, hey, we got one story of someone that had a really hard day, but went to one more call. And he's like, come on up. And I was like, oh man, I got to tell this story. And everybody in there was just like, what?
I was mad because a mom yelled at me. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Like,
I was like, they didn't hurt me though. It's all good, you know?
holy shit, dude. You got kidnapped in the middle of the summer.
And it was probably like, you know, now I call it golden hour as a photographer. It was probably like a 5 or 6 p.m. Like it wasn't night. You know?
I thought this was in the morning. I thought this was early morning. No, this is like late in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's so
that
funny.
that was the craziest thing, but lots of other fun things, you know, but those are my favorite days. Yeah.
So we've heard quite a bit of stories. I don't think we've ever had someone who got kidnapped and then brought back in pristine condition.
And just hitchhiked with some rando, and then all my stuff was still there.
Did you tell the guy that picked you up, like, hey, I got kidnapped? Like, what was your story? You're like, hey, no, I'm just trying to get, I'm walking.
I think I lied. I think I was like, I had to meet a friend and, you know, his car broke down. Cause I'm like, I knew what people thought about hitchhikers. I'm not going to tell this guy, like, someone just kidnapped me. And like, maybe now I'm kidnapping you. Like, I'm not gonna make the situation worse. Right. So yeah, I think I told him like, oh, I have to get back to my car.
They just grabbed you and put a blindfold on him. It's funny now. It probably wasn't. Well, you did. It sounds like even at the time you're like, whatever.
Well, because
this might as well happen. Like,
yeah,
it's Bookfield.
Because I just knew like there was no reason for me to be there. Right. It's like if I'm in a foreign country and someone comes up to me, I'm like, there's no reason for someone to come up to me in this country because I don't live here. So I'm either going to be aware or just going to be like, it's chill. And that was in the same way where I was just kind of thinking, well, this isn't, I'm not actually in danger because I didn't do anything to these people. I'll just convince them.
And you sold your freedom. You sold your way to freedom.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
You crewed them.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think we have that on the screen, but you calmed, resold, explained, and worked that away.
I worked out the way. I was like, you know, would you rather have another Prada purse or some books for your kids?
Oh, God, that's gold, man. That is so good. All right. Jordan Owen, everybody. Photographer by day, getting kidnapped by night. Kidnappee by night.
Exactly.
It's a good mix. Oh, man. Hey, this has been a blast, dude. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is, I've had a good time. Hopefully you had a blast reliving some of this.
Oh, yeah. No, it was great for me. Hopefully it was something interesting for you and your audience.
Dude, this is great. Thank you for giving us so much time too, by the way. It's one of our longer runs, but I hope people know that when they see a longer run, it means it's full of juice. It's like so solid. People always go, dude, why do you make them so long? I'm like, we don't mean to. It's just what happens when you have a good conversation with someone. Like it goes a long way, especially with book people, man. This is so fun. Oh, hey, well, next time I'm in New York City, I'll make sure to hit you up and maybe we can go grab a drink or something, talk some more funny stories.
Sounds good. Let me know.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be sure to connect you with at least some of my other photographer book alumni that you might connect with just to kind of get inspiration or follow up with. But I appreciate you being on here, my man. This has been a blast. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you guys subscribe for more stuff. Go follow and listen to other episodes. My name is Andres Gamboa. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.